Chapter 10:10. Xuanhuan Retsu was both angry and amused. She thought that Zhuozhen knew his place, but he thought that Dustless was scared. Humph, that brat has only been a death god for half a year, but I've been a death god for dozens of times longer than him. I was even personally trained by Lord Yuan Lu Sai, Zhuozhen said proudly. There were only a few people who were taught by the head captain, and he was one of them. He did have the right to be arrogant. Anyway, don't go find Qinjun. The head captain doesn't want Quiet Soul Society to have internal strife. After glancing at the hopeless left team, Xuanhuan Lai turned around and entered the 4th division. Before she left, she couldn't help but say, Qinjun is a very scary but also very cute person. I'm on his side. Captain Xuanhuan. What do you mean? Zhuozhen was taken aback and asked in an unfriendly tone. After being a captain for dozens of years, he naturally knew what Xuanhuan meant. It was a direct threat. In other words, if there was a war, Xuanhuan Retsu would side with Dustless. It's exactly what you think. Captain Zhuozhen, the 4th division still has things to do. Goodbye. Without turning around, Xuanhuan left Zhuozhen with her back. Being trained by the head captain was indeed something to be proud of. However, if he thought that he was superior and looked down on everyone else, it would be a joke. The head captain was the strongest death god in the past 1,000 years, but he was not invincible. Bastard. Seeing this, Zhuozhen's heart was filled with anger, and a sense of grievance and resentment arose spontaneously. Today seemed to be the most unlucky day in his life. He was ignored and slapped in the face again and again. His rough and thick face turned purple and black. Time quickly passed. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. The 1st Division held a captain's meeting as usual. I've decided to send an expeditionary force into Hueco Mundo to find traces of East Deity and capture him. The head captain opened his turbid old eyes. They were not as unfocused as before. His gaze was as sharp as a knife and as sharp as an eagle's. It was very threatening. The head captain said in an imposing manner, if East Deity is the culprit behind everything, he must be arrested and brought to justice. Hearing this, Dustless looked at Xuanhuan Retsu. This was probably the result of her discussion with the head captain. Sir Head Captain, I'm willing to go to Hueco Mundo. Zhuozhen was the first to volunteer. It's not suitable for you to go to Hueco Mundo. Everyone knows about your relationship with Captain East Deity. If you don't see it, then it will be bad. Hearing this, Zhuozhen's face darkened. He looked at the source of the voice and found that it was Wuqian. Don't slander me. If I'm not suitable, do you think you're suitable? Zhuozhen sneered. He didn't have a good impression of Dustless. Hearing this, Wuqian smiled calmly and walked out of the group of captains. He also volunteered to fight, saying, everyone knows about my conflict with Eastern Deity. The most suitable person for this expedition to Hueco Mundo is undoubtedly me. Oh. Aizen Sokiai stood out and said, you're the captain of the 11th Division. If you leave, who will be in charge of the Great Void from Soul Society and the Modern Realm? I personally recommend you to be the captain. In the end, you're just afraid that I'll kill your dogs. You'll have a better chance if you find a soft-hearted Zhuozhen. Dustless disdained. At the same time, he organized his thoughts. Just as he was about to argue, the head captain spoke first. The captain of the 11th Division is indeed not suitable to go to Hueco Mundo, but Yamamoto nodded calmly and said, East Deity is about to betray Soul Society. The 7th Division is now in a slump. Since Captain Dustless wants to go to Hueco Mundo, then transfer to the 7th Division and become the captain. If I transfer to the 7th Division and become the new captain, then who will be the captain of the 11th Division? Sword 8? Dustless guessed in his heart. He subconsciously looked at Old Man Yamamoto. Although he hid it very well, the pride in Old Man Yamamoto's eyes was clearly seen by Dustless. Could it be, that cunning old man? Dustless instantly understood the head captain's intention. He cursed in his heart, if I'm not wrong, Zaraki should be the one to replace me. I didn't expect him to take advantage of me in the end. Dustless shook his head and sighed. The head captain's next words confirmed his guess. Captain Dustless will be transferred to the 7th Division and replaced by the original vice-captain, Zaraki. His strength is obvious to all. He is completely qualified to be the new, Sword 8. The head captain's old voice revealed a touch of dominance. I agree with both hands and feet, Dustless said indifferently. I also agree, Xuanhuan Retsu followed. The vice-captain of the 11th Division? That Ryatsu monster. Although he doesn't know Bankai, his rough Ryatsu is indeed suitable to be a captain. Plus, his vitality is very strong. If that's the case, I also agree, Yukitake Fukaku said. Okitake Jushiro also agreed. Old man Yamamoto was his teacher, so he naturally had to support him at this time. Seeing this, the head captain smiled with satisfaction. He waved his hand and said in a powerful voice, "If that's the case, Dustless will be transferred to the 7th Division, and Zaraki will be the new Sword 8. The mission of going to Hueco Mundo will be handed over to the 7th Division." Dustless was indifferent. After all, as long as he was the captain, it didn't matter which division it was. He didn't expect the so-called members to be of any help anyway. At the crucial moment he still had to rely on himself. Others were unreliable. Chapter 10-11. Sosuke Aizen's expression didn't change, but his heart was filled with despair. There was no doubt that Dustless's strength was enough to capture East Sensei. Once he was captured, Aizen's plan would fail. What's worse, he would be exposed. Aizen's brain raced as he tried to think of a solution, but he couldn't think of a suitable one. He could only watch Dustless's back as he left. At least tell East Sensei about this, let him hide for a while. Aizen made a decision. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. Dustless stepped into Hueco Mundo as he wished. The first impression of this barren land was that it was stingy. Kakaka. In the boundless void, a blinding white light suddenly flashed. Then, a door that connected to a different dimension appeared. Then a figure rushed out from it. Is this the Expeditionary Army's camp? Looking down at the Expeditionary Army encampment below, Dustless muttered to himself. His body shook as he landed on the ground. At the same time, several figures rushed over. "Hello, I am the captain of Hueco Mundo's Expeditionary Army. My name is Embroidered Shell." A middle-aged man wearing a death armor came over and said politely to Dustless, "Isn't this guy Embroidered Shell? He replaced Ikamaru Jin's 3rd Division captain after Ikamaru Jin and Aizen betrayed Soul Society? He's not a good guy either." Dustless confirmed this person's origin and identity. Embroidered Shell gave off a similar feeling to Aizen. His first impression was that he was gentle and polite. He didn't have the arrogance of a Death Expeditionary Army captain. Instead, he was as approachable as an ordinary person. In fact, this was all a disguise. This guy was just a poisonous snake that hid his tongue. If he exposed a flaw, he would open his bloody mouth and deliver a fatal blow. In short, he was the same as Aizen, shrewd and scheming. Dustless went straight to the point. "Captain Tianbei, the head captain should have informed you beforehand. My purpose for coming here is that East Deity wants to." The Heavenly Shell embroidery assistant nodded when she heard this. Shortly after, she laughed loudly and said, "You don't have to worry about this. Our expeditionary army has already detected the traces of the Eastern Deity Fortress." However, at this point, the Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant scratched her head awkwardly and sighed helplessly. "However, I only managed to find traces of him. His abilities are terrifyingly strong and I am no match for him. Sigh, it's all my fault for being so useless that the Soul Society had to send someone. This is very normal. East Deity Yu's strength is beyond Death God's knowledge. There are only a handful of people in Soul Society who can fight him head-on. Captain Tianbei, you don't have to belittle yourself." Dustless glanced at the Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant. His expression was natural. He had expected this. With the half-completed Hogyoku, East Deity's strength would increase tremendously. The only thing that puzzled him was that it had only been half a month since East Deity Fortress was kicked out of Soul Society. In the vast Hueco Mundo and with the limited manpower of the Expeditionary Army, it had only taken half a month to find traces of East Deity Fortress. This efficiency was unreliable. However, I still have to congratulate Captain Tianbei. East Deity Fortress is now an important criminal of Soul Society. If you capture him, it will definitely be a great achievement. Dustless cupped his hands and congratulated. One would not hit a smiling person. No matter what happened to the Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant in the future, at the very least, she was still on Soul Society's side. "It is my duty to serve Soul Society until the day I die," the Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant said solemnly. Immediately after, she pulled Dustless to the Expeditionary Army's encampment and said, "You have traveled thousands of miles from Soul Society to Hueco Mundo. Although the Expeditionary Army has very few resources of all kinds, a welcome meal is absolutely indispensable." Dustless did not refuse and followed the Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant to the Expeditionary Army's encampment. The only thing that made him uncomfortable and strange was that he had only passed through a world-crossing gate to reach Hueco Mundo. As for the thousands of miles, in the evening, a banquet was held at the Expeditionary Army's encampment, which was much more abundant than the usual monotonous meals. Most of the so-called expeditionary army were abandoned people of Soul Society. Most of them were exiled sinners and criminals. Soul Society would never care about them and would even forget them directly. This was a group of abandoned people. That night, perhaps because he drank too much, Dustless entered a dream early, or perhaps because of the sudden change of environment, Dustless was a little uncomfortable and his head was dizzy all day. Boom, boom. At midnight, a loud explosion resounded through the starry sky within 100 miles. The destructive fluctuations were inhumane and almost wiped out the entire expeditionary army's encampment in an instant. I've just arrived and there are already great voids coming to my door. Why are they not giving me face? Caught off guard, Dustless was buried in the sand pit and it took him a long time to wake up from his daze. Then he saw his haki spread out like water ripples, and the great voids around him did not let him go. A vasto lord, and a few ajuchas. In addition there are a lot of Jillian. Such an exaggerated lineup should not be directed at the expeditionary army. Since it was not directed at the expeditionary army, the target could only be Dustless, a newcomer. Aizen, that traitor, told Dongsin in advance that he wanted me to come to Hueco Mundo, so he sent Vasto Lord to plot against me? Dustless whispered and the sky suddenly turned golden. Whoosh. When the mysterious Vasto Lord noticed that Dustless was still alive, he casually shot out a huge golden void flash. Due to its power, it directly dyed the dark night into a dazzling day. In a trance, Dustless saw a female great voids with long golden hair. Chapter 10-12. So it's her. What a pity. You Vasto Lord were born with the curse of fate. You're just pawns used by Aizen Sosuke. Ignoring the void flash, Dustless's body glowed with a bright light as he dashed out at a speed beyond any creature's comprehension. Boom, boom, boom. The huge void flash created a huge crater in the ground. A large part of the silver desert was scorched. All life forms caught in the blast were annihilated. It must be an illusion. The blonde void muttered to herself. She suddenly felt a flash of light pass by her shoulder. When she tried to sense it, it disappeared. Now that she thought about it, it must have been an illusion. How strange. You should be called Hellable. Now you've become a raid. How shocking. It seems that East Senpai has been driven crazy by me. He's using the half-finished Hogyoku to evade you. A ghostly whisper came from behind her. Hellable's expression changed as she turned around. Death God. Hellable glared at Dustless and clenched her fists. She turned to look at the scorched land. Her beautiful eyes were filled with shock. She was hit by the void flash. How could she be unharmed? This was cheating. Don't worry. I won't kill you. Dustless chuckled. He could see that Hellable's blonde hair was covered in sweat. Her vigilance was clear. East Senpai ordered you to come, right? Aizen was still in Soul Society. Only East Senpai could order Hellable. Humph, I have no right to tell you that. Holding the sharp-boned sword, Hellable said stubbornly, Death God and voids are natural enemies. It's normal for me to kill you. No one ordered me. I'm a Vasto Lord. There's no one in Hueco Mundo who can order me around. You're quite stubborn. Dustless couldn't help but feel sorry for Hellable. From the beginning to the end, she was just a pawn of Aizen. The most melodramatic thing was that in the future, Aizen thought that Hellable had no value and instantly killed her with his blade. She was a synonym for tragedy. Ring turn. After the cold shout, Hellable was nowhere to be seen. Even though I don't know why, it seems like I was only able to escape Void Flash's attack by sheer luck. Hellable appeared on Dustless's right. Seeing that he didn't even notice her existence, she sneered and swung her sharp-boned sword. Whoosh, whoosh. Because Hellable had used too much strength, her sword was covered in a layer of sharpness. She swung it mercilessly at Dustless's head. Voidwalkers were cruel and violent, and Hellable was no exception to her enemies. Clang clang clang, dazzling sparks splashed in the air. Hellable was stunned. Her eyes widened as she looked at Dustless in a daze. You caught my slash with your bare hands? Harabelle said in shock, her voice trembling. Dustless Eagle's bony little hand easily grabbed her sharp, serrated blade. It was as easy as grabbing a fire stick. It was exceptionally easy. How is this possible? He's just the captain of the Grim Reaper. Logically speaking, a Vasto Lord should be stronger than a captain-level Grim Reaper. But why is this happening now? Hellable muttered to herself in disbelief. Due to the excessive shock, her proud snowy peaks were undulating, swaying at a soul-stirring angle. Looking at the calm Dustless, Hellable realized that her brain, which she usually relied on, was not enough today. Looking at his cold eyes, Hannibal suddenly realized that she had returned to the time hundreds of years ago, becoming an insignificant void of the lowest level. Gulp. Hannibal made a rare noise. Then, her beautiful eyes shone with a fierce light. The haze was swept away, and the strength in her hand increased by several times. She thought that she could cut off Dustless's arm, but what happened next killed her. Crack crack crack. A crisp cracking sound followed. Obviously, Hannibal's unreserved attack had dealt a blow to her optimism. However, Hannibal was not happy. "I'm sorry for breaking your weapon," Dustless said apologetically as he looked at the crack on the white weapon. The cracked bone weapon was the great sword that had accompanied Hannibal for many years. What kind of monster is this guy? Seeing that, Hannibal immediately retreated in a flash. She stared at Dustless's fist in disbelief. She was stunned. Even with her mental fortitude, she could not help but be stunned by such a shocking scene. She lost her mind and thought, "Vasto Lord? Do you think that will change anything? In my eyes, Jillian and Vasto Lord are the same. It's meaningless." Vasto Lord was indeed able to crush the captain, but he had to know who he was dealing with first. If it was a veteran captain like Unohan Alai or Old Man Yamamoto, the one being crushed would be a great void like Vasto Lord. "I once chased East Deity Yao out of Soul Society. His strength far surpasses yours. Do you know what this means?" Dustless sneered and continued, "He only sent you to test me. It's best if you can kill me, but it's fine if you can't. At most you'll be killed. You're just a pawn anyway. Not only you but the other great voids and the so-called Vasto Lord are all pawns. Right now you belong to the category of being abandoned." Chapter 10:13. Hearing this, Hannibal stared at Dustless. She did not mention anything about Aizen and East Sensei. "Little girl, do you think I don't know who the mastermind is?" Naive. Dustless could not help but laugh. Ordinary people might not know, but he was an invader from the third dimension. He knew everything about Aizen, East Sensei, and Jin Ikamaru. "Remember, I'm not an abandoned pawn. Otherwise, that lord would have killed me long ago," Hannibal said coldly. Her tone was firm. She believed Aizen and the others. Pfft. Hearing this, Dustless could not help but laugh. He mocked, "Idiot, don't you understand the situation? You're just sending yourself to death. This is called borrowing someone else's knife to kill someone." Whoosh. Done talking, Dustless turned into a gale and wreaked havoc out. A violent storm rolled up behind him, and he instantly disappeared without a trace. So fast. Hannibal's pupils constricted as she felt a fatal threat. At the same time she was furious. Dustless had charged over so openly. Clearly he did not take her seriously. Just like the provocation just now, in Dustless's eyes, Vasto Lord was Jillian. "I'll play with you until the end. Let's see how strong you are." Golden spiritual pressure erupted as Hannibal unhesitatingly returned to her blade. The difference between them was too great. She could only use her trump card to deal with Dustless. Conquer him, Emperor Mermaid Empress. After returning to her blade, Hannibal was clearly different from before. Her aura skyrocketed, and a terrifying tide of energy flowed out of her body. It was endless, wave after wave like an endless sea. Then, something even stranger happened. Crack, crack, crack. Icy spiritual pressure swept out, freezing everything in its path. With Hannibal as the center, everything within a few hundred meters turned into a land of ice. "This kind of trick. Don't use it on me again." With a stern expression, Dustless gathered light under his feet, and he fiercely landed. Lightspeed kick. Boom, boom. With a loud boom, the ground around them trembled violently, and cracks appeared without any pattern. The ice continent that Hannibal had painstakingly created was instantly turned into nothing. "This guy, what kind of monster is he?" Hannibal's expression was abnormally ugly. Her face was covered in frost and she was surrounded by cold air. She was like a goddess that had walked out of ice and snow, isolated from the world. Even a docile sheep would fly into a rage after being repeatedly slapped in the face by someone, not to mention that Hannibal was a ferocious shark. "This is the price for infuriating me." With a shout, Hannibal aimed her Zanpakuto at Dustless. The Ryatsu in her body was affected by Aizen's brainwashing, surging like a surging river. Hannibal was furious and desperately injected spiritual pressure from his body into the Zanpakuto. Buzz buzz buzz. The dense spiritual pressure gathered on the Zanpakuto, and the entire blade was shining. It trembled slightly and emitted a clear sound as it was enveloped by the high-density spiritual pressure. Die. With a cold expression, Hannibal remembered what Dustless had done. She raised her Zanpakuto and mercilessly swung it. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A huge golden slash whizzed out, and anything that stood in its way was annihilated under this blade. It carried Helibal's hatred as it slashed toward Dustless. "Vast, O Lord, you're not strong, but you have quite the temper." With a contemptuous smile, Dustless used an unparalleled move with a snap of his fingers. Hado 63 Thunder Roar Cannon. The same golden flash shot out, leaving a straight afterimage in the sky. "Idiot, you want to cancel out my move? Although you can do it, Hado 63 is too weak. The difference between the two of us is like heaven and earth." Helibal sneered. She had fought with the Grim Reaper before, so she had some understanding of Keto. To cancel out her attack, one would need at least Hado 90 and above. Looking at Dustless, Helibal's lips twitched, and she was about to give him a good beating. What happened next made her view of the world collapse instantly. Boom boom boom. A deafening explosion came from the sky, and the dark night sky shone brightly for a moment. Looking up, two powerful moves intertwined. Helibal's attack was obviously at a disadvantage, and it was forcefully torn apart by the golden sphere. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The ear-piercing sound of something breaking through the air came, and the aura of death rushed toward her. Helibal's eyes widened as she saw the golden sphere coming toward her. How is this possible? How did this guy do it? The Hado 63 of the other Grim Reapers would have a hard time destroying the steel skin of a greater void like Vasto Lord. Helibal, who was shocked, immediately flicked out a ray of light that could destroy the world. Wangsu's flash. Boom boom boom. There was an explosion in the void, followed by a blinding light that could be seen from 1,000 meters away. The temperature in the affected area increased by hundreds of times, and even the spiritual pressure in the atmosphere was evaporated, and there was a danger of suffocation. Helibal used her strongest void flash to cancel out Dustless's move. "Do you understand now?" Dustless asked indifferently without attacking, and the spiritual pressure in his body suddenly calmed down. "What do you mean?" Helibal, who was panting, asked in an unfriendly manner. "This woman. Looks like she still doesn't understand. No wonder she was used by Aizen. She's so slow that she doesn't even have a bottom line." Dustless complained in his mind and then said seriously, "I told you before, you're just sent to die. The difference in our strength is just like before. In the end you are just an abandoned pawn to test me." Chapter 10:14. Helibal was so angry at Dustless that her cheeks turned red, her blonde hair standing on end and her eyes spitting fire. "Shut up," Helibal said gloomily, filled with murderous intent. However, Dustless was the kind of person who didn't know what was good for him. The more Helibal didn't want to listen to Dustless's verbal attacks, the more he shouted. "Aizen East-sensei and those three idiots Ikamaru Jin, they're all whoosh whoosh whoosh." Without waiting for Wu Chen's voice to fall, several sharp lights that wanted to pierce through him and destroy him attacked him like a rainstorm. Boring, Dustless glanced at them and closed his eyes. A transparent wall formed. Bakudo 81 sky-shattering. Bang bang bang. It was just a transparent wall as thin as a cicada's wing, but it was like two different worlds. Dustless from the other world couldn't even touch it. It was impossible to shake him. This guy's strength is unreliable. It's hard to make any substantial progress with his attacks that are all bark and no bite. Helibal had a headache. She used to think about what an invincible enemy looked like. Now she finally had a clearer understanding. This narrow-minded man who liked to scold others and speak ill of others was a living specimen. "You seem to be very difficult to deal with?" "That's true." Seeing Helibal's confusion, Dustless smiled and teased, "If you are willing to lower your head and be my spy, and snatch the half of Hogyoku from East Deity Zhao, I can let you go reluctantly." "You want me to be a traitor? What nonsense are you talking about?" Helibal said stubbornly. Her tone was as calm as a mountain, as if she was saying that even if she had to die, she would die together with Dustless. Aizen's method of training his subordinates is truly admirable. Seeing this, Dustless nodded. He could naturally hear the hidden meaning in Helibal's tone. Not to mention retreat, there was no room for negotiation. Wangsu's flash. Her slender fingers flickered and trembled. With a command, a golden beam of light covered the sky and earth. The demonic halo destroyed all living things. Everything in the world couldn't withstand a single blow from this beam of light. If a god blocked it, it would kill a god. If a Buddha blocked it, it would kill a Buddha. Stubborn. Seeing this, Wu Qin directly rushed out. He didn't attack or defend at all. He simply turned into a rainbow light and went forward as if he was courting death. Boom boom boom. Dustless, who rushed into the sky, disappeared, and his Ryatsu also disappeared permanently, as if he was blasted into nothingness. "Ah, An intoxicating laughter burst out from Helibal's red lips as she muttered to herself, Wang Su's flash without any defense, even Aizen-sama. But before she could be pleased with herself for a few seconds, Dustless's eccentric cocky voice directly petrified her. Sorry. I'm not Aizen. I don't know if he'll be hurt, but I definitely won't be hurt. Countless photons gathered from all directions, flashing and reforming. A handsome young man appeared, his pure white captain's feather as clean as snow. His messy hair danced in the wind, and a frivolous smile hung on his lips. He had a playful attitude toward the world. Seeing this, Helibal spat out blood. He was hit by void flash, but he was unharmed. I'm the flash. It's just a void flash, the light of a firefly. It's easier said than done to touch me. His indifferent eyes looked down at Helibal, shooting out a cold light. Dustless lost his playful mood. He sensed that something was wrong. Even now, the expeditionary army had disappeared without a trace. I'll ask you one last time. Where is that bastard from East Senpai? His right hand was as terrifying as a black hole, instantly collecting a large amount of photons. The blinding light made Helibal unable to open her eyes. She could only cover her eyes with her hands. I don't know. Through the gap between her fingers, Helibal said without hesitation. The moment she said that, Dustless threw out the light in his hand coldly. Yasukani no Magatama. So. The light bullets that filled the sky rumbled down. The densely packed number of light bullets caused one's soul to tremble. 1, 2, 3. Facing this ridiculous number, Helibal became more and more desperate as she counted. Her heart was cold and she felt powerless. Boom boom boom. Helibal unleashed her remaining Ryatsu without holding back. She knew that if she didn't do anything, the light bullets would turn her into a sieve. Puchi. The powerful water flow overflowed from the Sawtooth Zanpakuto and filled the sky in just a few breaths. Broken waterfall. With a command, the water flow in the sky came back to life and was given a special power. It changed according to Helibal's will, turning into a thick water pillar that blocked all the incoming light. Invading this huge water pillar, the light in the sky seemed to have stepped into a gravity field and could no longer move forward. Vastolord class large void. You have such a powerful ultimate move? I can't deny that I underestimated you before. Squinting his eyes into a slit, Wu Qin looked at the oncoming water column and sighed softly. The entire sky suddenly turned solemn. In order to repay you for opening my eyes, I will show you a little bit of my strength. Dustless's slightly magnetic voice was like the will of the heavens, connected to the will of the heavens dominating the world. Soon after, the entire sky began to undergo a shocking change. An ominous deathly stillness began to spread. The entire Hueco Mundo was silent, giving Helibal the illusion that she had teleported to another time and space. In this strange field, everything was cold to her and the entire world was her enemy. Chapter 10:15. Helibal was shocked. This was a feeling she had never felt before. Be it an illusion or an illusion, it was unforgettable. It left an indelible impression in her heart. Then the earth trembled. Violent tremors swept out like a tidal wave. Helibal was shocked to discover that an unprecedented colossus was standing in Hueco Mundo. What the hell is that? Death's Bankai? Her fluctuating tone was filled with fear. Helibal felt defeated like never before. No, it was definitely not as simple as seeing a ghost. At the very least, Helibal believed that she could fight or even destroy a so-called ghost if she encountered one. However, the towering figure in front of her made her feel as tiny and powerless as a grain of sand. She looked up at Dustless, or rather at the entire sky. Because Dustless represented the entire sky at this moment. The super monster behind him occupied Helibal's entire eyeball. There was no such thing as the sky. There was only Dustless and the giant Buddha behind him. The entire world was under his control. This is the end. With a soft murmur, Wu Qin suddenly let out a roar. Immortal technique, would release, true thousand hands, avatar above head. The colossal figure hidden in the darkness revealed its ferocious appearance. The giant Buddha formed by countless giant Buddhas dragged its body forward. The earth kept shaking as if there was an earthquake. Looking at the oncoming water column, Dustless felt that it was incomparably huge before. Now, it felt like a tiny insect that could be destroyed with a snap of his fingers. Get out of my way. As Dustless' voice fell, the giant Buddha behind him immediately responded, venting out Dustless's anger. Boom boom boom, tens of thousands of arms blasted out in unison. The endless number of arms came wave after wave, causing a devastating blow to anyone. It would have been fine if the individual arms were weak. Who would have thought that every arm that flew out would be extremely powerful? When they landed on the ground, they would cause violent tremors and deep craters. The entire Hueco Mundo was smashed until it was like the surface of the moon. Bam 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 bam, attacked by the fist shadows that filled the sky, the giant water column that was showing off was instantly shattered. It turned into a downpour that nourished the dried-up Hueco Mundo. My strongest move is actually so weak? Hannibal stared blankly at the bursting water. She was completely drenched. Her beautiful eyes were dull and had lost their usual luster. Now it seemed that Dustless had been playing with her all this while. Ah! What kind of stupid thing have I done to cause such a beautiful little girl to have a mental breakdown? I'm really a sinful person. Dustless sat on the head of the giant Buddha and said apologetically. You bastard! Linger, who had not spoken to Dustless for many years, could not help but jump out and say, if you really don't want to hurt her, you should just kill her. Hearing this, Wuqian shook his finger and said with pity, kill her in seconds? How could I bear to do that? I'm not a ruthless person. Linger almost vomited blood. She's also struggled and worked hard. In order to reach Vastolord's level, she sacrificed hundreds of years. If I kill her without a word and don't give Hannibal a chance to show herself, it's too unfair. Dustless explained as if it was the right thing to do. Linger's tone twitched as she scolded, you little brat, you're really shameless. You're clearly, in the end. Linger was speechless. She found herself speechless. Dustless's words were obviously twisted logic, but she could not find a suitable reason to refute. Killing someone without giving them a chance to spread their wings was indeed too cruel and heartless. Young girl, do you still want to resist? Dustless asked softly as he landed beside Hannibal. Resist? Hannibal raised her despondent eyes. Even though Dustless was right in front of her and she could reach him with her hands, but looking at the giant Buddha behind her, the Dustless in front of her was so far away that she could not touch him. I've said before that you're an abandoned pawn. Do you understand now? Dustless sat on the ground lazily. The chakra and spiritual pressure in his body had all calmed down, and the giant Buddha behind him had also disappeared. He stared at Hannibal and asked. Hannibal fell silent. When East Sensei wanted to send her here, she said that Dustless was just an ordinary captain. Based on the current situation, the ordinary captain that East Sensei said was not worth mentioning was now more than 100 times stronger. Moreover, Dustless's leisurely and uninteresting appearance clearly showed that he was not using his full strength. Damn East Sensei! Hannibal, who understood, gritted her teeth and cursed. She clenched her fists tightly and the veins bulged. Her entire body was filled with negative emotions that made one's scalp numb. Then she remembered East Sensei and Aizen Sosuke, as well as Jin Ikamaru's shocking strength. A bitter self-deprecating smile appeared on Hannibal's face, and she immediately deflated. She was instantly killed by Dustless. She was also instantly killed by the three of them. Moreover, she was now Dustless's captive. It's done. Seeing this, Dustless laughed inwardly. He cleared his throat and said loudly, as long as you follow me, I can help you take revenge at some point in the future. Dustless's words made Hannibal see the light of dawn again. Her unfocused eyes once again became bright and spirited. Not only that, his tone was deep and filled with endless magic. Hannibal also seemed to be possessed. Following Dustless's thoughts, she continued to throw out bait and said, in the future, I can help you take off the mask on your body. What Aizen Sosuke can do, I can do the same. I can even do it more perfectly than him. It's flawless. Chapter 10:16. Dustless tempted. If Hannibal wanted revenge, she had to rely on him and rely on Dustless's power to take revenge on Aizen. Whether it was a hollow or a Shinigami, they were creatures that clearly distinguished kindness and hatred. As long as they were tempted when they were at their weakest, the success rate would be 100%. No problem. After thinking for a while, Hannibal knelt on one knee to show her loyalty. Get up. Dustless smiled faintly. This was within his expectations. If someone who had always trusted him suddenly betrayed him, no matter who it would be unforgettable. Go back to East Sensei Lord for the time being. Dustless said after thinking for a while. You want to let him go? Hannibal was disappointed. She thought Dustless would kill East Sensei Lord, but his tone showed that he didn't want to kill East Sensei Lord. I can understand your feelings, but, hee. Dustless laughed sinisterly. If Aizen and East Sensei betrayed you, killing them would be too easy. You can use the same method to take revenge. If you do the first thing, I'll do the 15th. This wasn't too much, it was just reciprocity. That's right, good idea. Seeing this, Hannibal nodded her head in agreement with Dustless's words. For example, when Aizen completes the Hogyoku, he stealthily stole it. Dustless smiled mischievously as if he could already see Aizen's face turning green. The Hogyoku was more important to Aizen than his life. Then what's the next step of my plan? Accompany you to Soul Society? Hannibal asked expectantly. She was excited to enter the birthplace of a Shinigami as a hollow. I'm a Shinigami, I can't bring you to Soul Society. It was impossible to bring a grand hollow like Vasto Lord back to Soul Society, and Dustless still needed Hannibal to spy on East Sensei Lord. I understand, my lord, Hannibal said respectfully. She had a serious expression on her face. My lord? Just the sound of this word is annoying. Dustless's face was filled with displeasure when he heard this, and then he waved his hand and said bluntly, Don't call me lord, just call me. Frowning, Dustless felt particularly gloomy. All the subordinates who had addressed him as lord had left him in the end. It was so shameful that they had betrayed him. Dustless had a shadow in his heart. What's that called? Hannibal asked curiously, blinking her eyes. Just call me young master. After pondering for a while, Dustless revealed a faint smile. It was just a form of address. It was fine as long as it wasn't that so-called lord. Speaking of which, did you kill all of the expeditionary army? Dustless suddenly changed the topic and asked. Hearing this, Hannibal shook her head and denied it. Young master is my main target. The expeditionary army is just an accompaniment. It doesn't matter if I killed them, and it doesn't matter if I didn't kill them. They are all cannon fodder anyway, insignificant characters. Dustless's tightly knitted brows immediately relaxed after hearing Hannibal's words, and he felt relieved. He originally thought that the heavenly shell-embroidered Hannibal had secretly colluded with East Sensei Lord, but now it seemed that he had been overthinking. What is East Sensei Lord doing with that old fellow? Let me guess, he must be experimenting with Aaroncore like crazy. Dustless completely ignored Hannibal's existence and continued guessing. Hannibal nodded and said, He has indeed been experimenting with Aaroncore on a large number of occasions recently. A few of the disobedient Ajuchas were executed by him, and, at this point, Hannibal paused and thought for a while. And many of the Aaroncore failed and became sacrificial lambs. Due to the pressure brought by Dustless, East Sensei Lord had been experimenting with Aaroncore. Forget it, wait until I get Urahara Kisuke's half of the Hogyoku, then I will deal with East Sensei. Lazily lying on the sand, Dustless made a decision. East Sensei Lord's idiot was not Sosuke Aizen. He was thousands of miles away from Aizen's intelligence, and it was not reliable to rely on him to complete the Hogyoku. Since East Sensei Lord did not have the ability to complete it, Dustless could only do it himself. Perhaps Urahara Kisuke did a good job of keeping it a secret. Until now, Sosuke Aizen, Jin Ikimaru, and East Sensei Lord did not know that Urahara Kisuke had another Hogyoku. Go and keep an eye on East Sensei Lord's kid. If he does anything suspicious, immediately report to me. Dustless ordered Hannibal. With a flash of light in his eyes, Dustless suddenly stood up. Master, are you planning to leave Hueco Mundo? Hannibal asked. Dustless slowly nodded, his face filled with hostility. At first, he said that he was going on an expedition to Hueco Mundo, but in fact he was fooling the people of Soul Society. His real purpose was to secretly go to the modern world after reaching Hueco Mundo. The only thing in the modern world that attracted Dustless was Urahara Kisuke's Hogyoku. Right? Wuchen said abruptly as he stared at Hannibal. Embarrassment flashed across his face. I still need you to prepare the Black Passage to the modern world for me. The Shinigami was not a void and it was impossible to tear space to reach the modern world. He could only rely on the world crossing gate, and Dustless's trip was only between Hueco Mundo and Soul Society. Soul Society did not prepare a world crossing gate to the modern world for him. Hannibal glanced at Dustless strangely, then did as she was told. This was a trivial matter for a void, but for a Shinigami, it was as difficult as ascending to heaven. Especially for a top void like Hannibal, Vasto Lord, it was easy for her to tear space, but the Shinigami could not do it. Whether it was going to Hueco Mundo or the modern world, he needed to go through the world crossing gate. Chapter 10:17. Although Hannibal wondered what Dustless was doing in Hueco Mundo, she also shut up. A talkative subordinate asking something that shouldn't be asked will cause trouble. Inside the black cavity, there was an untimely sigh. In the darkness, the outline of a person walking slowly was clearly visible. The white face was sharp and angular, and the clear eyes were like the stars in the night sky, particularly dazzling and charming. Urahara Kisuke will definitely not hand over the Hogyoku. Dustless, who knew Urahara Kisuke, secretly said. He couldn't even hide it, let alone hand it over to Dustless. Kaka. The void broke, and Dustless poked his head out of the black cavity, looking down at the crowded land and the distant sky. Although the air pollution was very serious, he had lived in Soul Society for many years, and it felt good to suddenly change to the modern world. Who is it? The unfriendly burst was full of vigilance, several figures rushed out of the air, and they all pulled out their zanpakuto. Those who come out of the black cavity are generally Great Void. Members of the 10th Division. Looking at these Shinigami one by one, Dustless suddenly understood which division they were in. He vaguely remembered that the task of guarding the modern world seemed to be the responsibility of the 10th Division. Captain Haori. Looking at Dustless in surprise, several members of the 10th Division looked at each other and put down their zanpakuto. Something is wrong, it's strange. Captain should have used the world crossing gate to come to the modern world. This seems to belong to the Great Void. Soul Society hasn't said that there will be a captain coming to the modern world recently. The members of the 10th Division whispered and looked at Dustless puzzledly. If it weren't for the Captain Haori, they would have killed him with their zanpakuto. Only Great Void can come out of the black cavity, this is an unchangeable iron law. Glancing at several people, Dustless quietly spread his observation haki. After noticing that there was no one around, Dustless quietly asked, "Are there only a few of you patrolling the modern world?" "This is as you can see." Among them, the death god who was clearly the leader stepped forward and said, "Bail Egan died a few days ago, and the entire Hueco Mundo fell into the struggle for the king of Hueco Mundo, so the number of greater voids that invaded the modern realm has decreased. Currently there are only a few of us, that's for the best. It saves me the trouble of searching for the other members." Dustless's eyes flickered with red light as he spoke in a very strange manner. "What do you mean, Captain Wuxian?" The members of the 10th Division were confused and didn't understand what was going on. Clang clang clang. The sound of a saber being drawn stunned everyone. As they looked at Dustless, who was brimming with killing intent, they instinctively felt that something was wrong. "This blade of mine is called the first generation ghost blade. If it doesn't kill for a few days it will feel uncomfortable." Dustless whispered as he pointed at the first generation ghost blade's demonic blade. As soon as he finished speaking, first generation Guiche let out a clear cry, full of desire. "So?" Dustless's eyes emitted a cold glint as he condensed a wisp of spiritual pressure on his blade. He then roared, "Let me borrow your heads." Puchi. A spiritual pressure slash emerged from the tip of the saber, instantly killing several people and separating their heads from their bodies. What was even more sinister was that first-generation ghost blade's slash was filled with some kind of mysterious energy that annihilated their corpses. Boom boom boom. Due to the excessive strength of the slash, the ground also shook and was torn into a long and narrow abyss. The huge vibration could be felt several kilometers away. "If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for seeing me," Dustless muttered to himself as he looked at the place where the few people disappeared. Then looking down at the torn ground below, Dustless pondered, "You made such a big noise, even if I don't have to look for you, you should come to my door. Kangzucho is not very big but it's not small either." Dustless doesn't have the time to look for Urahara Kisuke's group in the vast sea of people. "Are they here?" A few minutes later, Dustless's eyes splashed and his eyes swept straight to the northern sky. "Originally I just wanted to attract Urahara Kisuke. Although he came, he also brought a group of uninvited guests. The scene a few kilometers away was unobstructed. In addition to Urahara Kisuke, there was also the masked legion and a wheat-skinned figure, Yi of the Four Maple Court. 10 kilometers, 5 kilometers, 1 kilometer, until the distance was only 100 meters, less than a minute had passed. Bang bang bang. There were several explosions in the sky in succession, and nearly 10 figures suddenly stood in the sky. Everyone's eyes were directed at Dustless, their faces unfriendly and indifferent. Alala, they actually caused such a big commotion. The head captain of Soul Society will be furious. No one can withstand that lord's temper. Urahara Kisuke took the lead to break the dull deadlock and pretended to be afraid. "I'm sure the head captain will understand my difficulties. The modern realm is much more crowded than the Soul Society. If I don't create a big commotion to attract all of you here, it'll take forever for me to find it by myself." His eyes swept across everyone, and when it fell on Lisa Yasudamaru, Dustless's mouth curled into a mocking smile. He had a deep impression of this girl who liked to read pornographic books. Even so, he just glanced at her, and his eyes finally fell on Urahara Kisuke. "I don't want to say anything unnecessary." This visit to the modern world is the captain's idea. Bringing up the shiny signboard of old man Yamamoto, Dustless said, "You must have heard about East Sage's defection to Soul Society, as well as the fact that he controlled both the Void and the Shinigami's power at the same time. The reason is that mysterious bead." Urahara Kisuke's face sank. He heard the other meaning in Dustless's words. When manager Urahara was in Soul Society, he also developed that kind of thing. The captain hopes that you can call him out and I will leave. If you resist, according to the captain's orders, I can only annihilate all of you. Chapter 10:18. Manager Urahara also developed that kind of thing when he was in Soul Society. The head captain hopes that you can call him out and I will leave. If you resist, according to the head captain's order, I can only annihilate all of you. These words immediately caused everyone to be stunned, and they all glared at Dustless. You don't seem to understand the situation. You are the one who is surrounded. Within the masked army, there were dissatisfied voices filled with ridicule and disdain. They deliberately raised their voices, and it was filled with endless sarcasm and ridicule. Dustless looked at the source of the voice, and a blonde girl suddenly appeared in front of him. She looked beautiful and arrogant, and Dustless recognized her. She was the second in command of the masked army, Ri Shiori. Hirako Masako, who usually disagreed with Ri Shiori, was now silent, and he silently agreed with Ri Shiori's actions. You are just a little kid who hasn't grown up yet. You are not tall, but you have a bad temper. I don't want to argue with you. Dustless looked away and he directly looked at Urahara Kisuke and threatened. From now on, you only have 5 minutes. Everything is up to you. Dustless then closed his eyes and his mind started to wander. Bastard, how dare you ignore me? Seeing this scene, Ri Shiori, who had a bad temper, roared and rushed out of the team. Hirako Masako also pretended not to see it, and let Ri Shiori do whatever she wanted. Be careful, Ri Shiori, this guy is not normal. He is definitely not an ordinary captain. Lisa looked at Dustless with fear and said with a serious face, I have fought with her before and she is very strong. According to my personal guess, besides the head captain, this bad boy with a wicked smile is the weirdest in the Godii 13. Bad boy with a wicked smile? Hearing this, Dustless opened his eyes and his face was gloomy and he shouted loudly, Which family is this little kid from? You haven't even grown any hair. There is no place for you to talk here. Crawl back home and sleep. Drink more milk and eat less snacks so you can grow taller. Dustless's words immediately ignited Ri Shiori, who was a powder keg. He opened his mouth and a huge flash appeared. Void flash. Whoosh, whoosh. The crimson light swept through the heavens and the earth, crushing toward Dustless in a mighty manner. It was unstoppable, and the energy fluctuations it emitted wanted to tear Dustless to pieces. She hated it when people called her short. A brat is indeed a brat. Since bickering doesn't work, he resorts to violence. Dustless stretched lazily and yawned. He smiled and said, However, I'm an all-rounder. I'm good at bickering and I'm second to none when it comes to violence. The spiritual pressure hidden in Dustless's body began to roar and surge. He was not afraid at all as he looked at the incoming void flash. His clear eyes flashed with a thick sneer. Tao Breaker 88, Flying Dragon strikes the thief. Whoosh, whoosh. A flash of light far denser than void flash whistled through the air, streaking across the sky and heading straight for void flash. Everyone thought that the two equally powerful attacks would cancel each other out. However, what happened next greatly exceeded their expectations. There was no such thing as a countermeasure. The battle was one-sided. Crack. The dazzling light cut through the thistles and thistles, crushing Void Flash with overwhelming power. Void Flash, who had high hopes, was torn apart. They were not in the same dimension. The members of the masked army looked at each other in disbelief. They looked at the calm Dustless in disbelief. Manager Urahara, you don't have time to be surprised. There are only about 4 minutes left. Dustless said coldly. He was decisive and dismissive. He was just a child who hadn't grown up. As far as I know, the head captain didn't give such an order. Urahara Kisuke wondered. Nonsense, because I made it up. What the hell do you know? Dustless laughed in his heart, but on the surface he continued to say seriously, Such a secret mission, if a defected captain like you knows about it, isn't all the secrets of Soul Society equivalent to being exposed to the world? Urahara Kisuke raised his eyebrows. His eyes flashed. Kisuke, don't hand over that thing for the time being. If he's with Aizen, then we'll be setting ourselves on fire. Yusuke Urahara analyzed calmly. Urahara Kisuke agreed. His first impression of Dustless was that he was ambitious. "You bastard, look here." Shiroi pointed at Dustless and cursed, "I'll let you know the consequences of underestimating me. You're alone but we're a team. Who's at an advantage?" "I don't need to tell you." After a triumphant laugh, Shiroi said with exultation, "After we capture you, we can exchange Soul Society's captured Hiroyuki Rokuro." Shiroi's tone took a sharp turn. The way he looked at Dustless changed drastically. He changed from being loyal to him to being overbearing. "Hiroyuki Rokuro? So that's how it is. You're after him. It's a good idea, but it's a pity. He's already been killed by East Sensei. His soul has been integrated into the semi-finished Hogyoku. Your wish is destined to fail." Dustless said with a slight smile. "Soul Society dares to kill a captive." Hirako Shinko's eyes were filled with energy. His Zanpakuto shook. The whole world began to change. It was like a dream world. "What does it have to do with me?" Facing the gaze of the masked legion, Dustless's performance was mediocre. It was Aizen and Jin who captured Hiroyuki Rokuro. It was also East Sensei who integrated his soul into the Hogyoku. It had nothing to do with Dustless. Chapter 1019. Urahara Kisuk pondered, and the words of Four Maple Court echoed in his mind. He sincerely agreed, and the half-finished Hogyoku that was about to be taken out in his right hand was stuffed back into his clothes. Such an inexplicable person, just because of the head captain's order, it's too childish to give him Hogyoku. Moreover, it was still worth investigating whether the so-called head captain's order was real or fake. Perhaps it was just a rumor. "Yisen, you're right. We really can't give Hogyoku to this man, he's very dangerous. Just like you said, his origin is mysterious, maybe he's Aizen's accomplice." Urahara Kisuk pulled out his Zanpakuto and expressed his position. Clang, clang. Seeing this, Dustless also pulled out his first-generation Onikaku. The scene was full of gunpowder and a battle was about to begin. Is he going to resist to the end? I really don't know where his confidence comes from. We have so many people, and our strength is around the captain level, but this kid is so calm and indifferent. Seeing Dustless was as calm as a mountain, Hirako Shinko said in surprise. "It's not good to fight, although it's a group of minions after a long battle. Soul Society will notice sooner or later, and it will be bad if it causes unnecessary trouble." Ignoring the people of the Masked Legion, Dustless's eyes were fixed on Urahara Kisuk and Four Maple Court. "Kid, you're crazy." Hirako Shinko was angry and said with a fake smile. He finally understood Rishiori's depressed mood just now. He was talking to others seriously, but the other party just glanced at him. The feeling of being looked down and ignored was unbearable for anyone. The Zanpakuto suddenly emitted a strange fragrance, and Hirako Shinko sneered. What a strange smell. Slightly smelling the rich fragrance floating in the air, Dustless's eyes were in a trance, and then the world in front of him changed dramatically. Fall Kisuk. Hirako Shinko didn't hesitate to release his Zanpakuto, and the world in Dustless's eyes immediately turned upside down. Up and down, left and right, front and back, all directions were reversed. There's such an ability? It's amazing. Dustless nodded secretly, quite surprised. All the scenes in front of him were reversed, and Hirako Shinko, who was standing before, was also upside down. So that's how it is. It must be that the fragrance I smelled just now that interfered with my vision. After pondering for a moment, Dustless understood the cause and effect and immediately praised, "Not bad, very interesting ability, illusionary Zanpakuto is very rare." Hearing this, Hirako Shinzi did not appreciate it. His expression turned cold and he stepped out, crossing through space. Annoying Grim Reaper, disappear. The moment he reappeared, Hirako Shinko appeared in front of Dustless, and his Zanpakuto swept from the left. Sensing the bone-piercing aura, Dustless raised his eyelids slightly and raised his first-generation ghost blade in an orderly manner. A cold light slashed towards Hirako Shinko. Idiot. Seeing this, Tara Shinko sneered. The first-generation ghost blade pierced through his body, but he was unharmed. It was obvious that it did not hit him. With an arrogant smile on his face, Hirako mocked, "Your brain is indeed slow to react. In your eyes I am upside down." In other words, Dustless saw Hirako Shinko coming from the left, but he was actually on the right. Coming alone to challenge all of us? You don't know the difference between life and death. Go repent in hell. Hirako Shinko's Zanpakuto mercilessly slashed towards Dustless. Soul Society killed Hirako Shinko's close friend, and now it's time to kill Dustless. Blood for blood. Puchi. Blood splashed in the void and the smile on Hirako Shinko's face froze. A piercing pain spread all over his body, and a long and narrow wound appeared on his chest. His flesh was torn open and even his intestines could be seen. Are you dreaming? After a while, the absent-minded Heroicjourney roared with blood in his mouth. His eyes suddenly looked at Dustless and he was hit back by merciless flash. Lightspeed kick. Boom boom boom. The bright light hit Heroicjourney. His whole body was scorched, his consciousness fainted, and he was mercilessly bombarded, smashing a deep pit on the ground, leaving only a weak breath. Heroicjourney was severely injured in just one blow. Can you confuse human vision? It's indeed a good ability. I forgot to say before, when I fight I rarely use my eyes. Observation hockey spread like a tide, and everyone was accurately locked by Dustless. Hirako. You bastard, I'm going to kill you. Besiege him together. The masked legion roared at the sky, and their spiritual pressure was raised to the limit. A group of hungry wolves who hadn't eaten for many years rushed towards Dustless. Don't act rashly, come back quickly. Urahara Kisuke, who realized that something was wrong, quickly shouted, but he was ignored by the angry masked legion. They all used their strongest moves to attack Dustless. This is bad, we're completely passive. These guys should at least listen to me, I have a detailed plan. Urahara Kisuke smiled bitterly and couldn't help but feel a headache. Fetters are a double-edged sword, hurting others and hurting oneself. Once a teammate is injured, the potential of the body will burst out, but there is also a situation like now, where they all turn into berserk beasts without reason. There is no need to make any plan. If he is at the same level as Sosuke Aizen, any plan is useless. If he is not as good as Aizen, we won't need a plan. I'm going to, Kisuke. Slightly tidying up her slender hair, 4 maple quartz Ichi shouted, instant open. The clothes behind her suddenly burst, revealing her smooth jade back, and a lot of spiritual pressure also overflowed. 4 maple quartz Ichi's incredible speed was beyond imagination, and she disappeared in the blink of an eye. Feelings are really deep, fetters are really great. Nowadays it's popular to die in groups. Dustless secretly laughed and brandished his saber to welcome. Chapter 1020. Dustless held the first-generation ghost blade in his hand. Even if he still didn't have his own Zanpakuto, the strength of the Shinigami was enough to crush a generation. This speed, so abnormal. His pupils shrank, Dustless perceived a super-strong Ryatsu locking onto him, and the speed was extremely exaggerated. Even his observation hockey couldn't capture the trajectory of the movement, and he could only feel a vague storm rushing toward him. Yi of the 4 Maple Court? Vaguely catching a short and delicate figure, Dustless calmed down. In the entire Soul Society, there are no more than 5 people who can reach this level of speed. Only Soi Fan, the captain of the 2nd Division, matches this figure with Yi of the 4 Maple Court. You came at the right time. You are Urahara Kisuke's weakness. After I catch you, Urahara Kisuke will obediently turn himself in and hand over the Hogyoku without me saying anything. With a decision in his heart, Dustless gave up the idea of using elementalization to avoid the attack and stood indifferently in the sky. You want to fight me head-on? Pretty boy captain, you have guts. Seeing that Dustless didn't dodge, Yi of the 4 Maple Court immediately raised her right arm and covered it with Ryatsu, condensing enough strength to smash a mountain. The moment the young fist blasted out, Dustless also raised his black arm. Boom, boom. At the place where Wu Qin stood, there was a deafening explosion. The spiritual seed flame was ignited out of thin air. The blazing temperature made everyone stop in their tracks and dare not approach. Even if I can't kill him, this kid will definitely be choked to death by the Ryatsu flame. Yi of the 4 Maple Court raised her arm dramatically and announced her victory with a heroic smile. Damn it, is that the feeling just now? Is he really human? Is he made of iron? Holding her trembling right arm tightly, Yi of the 4 Maple Court was shocked. Her right hand, which hit Dustless, was red and swollen. If she forced it just now, Yi of the 4 Maple Court suspected that her entire hand bones would be broken. Boom, boom. A turbulent spiritual pressure hurricane wreaked havoc, and the burning spiritual seed flame in the void was instantly suppressed, revealing a handsome young man. His aura was steady, his clothes were bright, and his eyes were bright. His bright and spirited eyes showed that the fierce attacks of 4 Maple Court's Yi were all useless and self-deceiving. Gulp. Choking with sobs, Yi of the 4 Maple Courtyard looked even more gloomy. She was so depressed that she wanted to vomit blood. She had hit Dustless with all her strength, but her opponent was safe and sound. Instead, she had almost lost an arm. Dustless's eyes turned cold as he scrutinized them. flashes of light filled the sky as they rained down. Tao Breaker 91, Thousand Hands Bright Sky Cannon. The densely packed number of Tao Breaker was enough to stun anyone. Looking up, it was very different from the normal 91 Tao Breaker. It was almost as if it had formed a huge tide of energy. This fellow's attainment in the ghost Tao is actually so terrifying. Urahara Kisuk sucked in a breath of cold air with lingering fear. He thought that his ghost path was second to none. Today he witnessed such an exaggerated attack and it was an eye-opener. There was always someone better than him. Urahara Kisuk looked around and shouted loudly, "Leave it to me. You guys wait for the right opportunity to subdue him." The captain-level spiritual pressure was boiling, and its intensity was far stronger than that of ordinary captains. Bakudo 81 Skybreaker. Bakudo 81 Skybreaker. Bakudo 81 Skybreaker. After using more than a dozen Bakudo 81 in succession, Urahara Kisuk lowered his head and gasped for breath. His forehead was already covered in cold sweat. Using so many Bakudo at once and they were all high-level ones, no one could withstand it. Boom. Boom. The more effort, the greater the gain. Although the transparent defensive wall that they had painstakingly built was finally broken, it had also offset Dustless's attack. "You actually blocked it? Then let's do it again." The spiritual pressure in Dustless's body surged again. With a wave of his hand, the world was filled with multicolored light, and a fatal threat descended on everyone's heart. Dowbreaker 96 1/. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Before Dustless could finish the word "destroy the world," several figures surrounded him. "You guys are really good at taking advantage of the situation. At least it's not too late to attack after I finish this Dowbreaker. You really know how to take advantage of the situation." Dustless sighed. His arms and feet were subdued, and even a Zanpakuto was hanging over his head. The people of the masked legion had already surrounded Dustless so that not even a drop of water could trickle through. "Boy, don't think that I will kill you so easily." Looking at Hirako Masako on the ground, who almost died, Sarutobi's eyes were burning and she shouted, "I will give you the same scars and then destroy you." Hearing this, Dustless was indifferent. His observation haki spread out, and the scene within a radius of 10 miles was visible at a glance. "There is no one around and there are only a few people left in front of me. This is easy," Dustless secretly said in his heart, and his face was covered with frost and a layer of ice. "You still want to resist? Be sensible or I will kill you immediately." Feeling the violent spiritual pressure in Dustless's body, Sarutobi warned and waved her Zanpakuto in her hand, which was full of threat. "You guys can come to die together. Your relationship is so deep that it makes people jealous." Looking around at the masked army as well as Yi of the Four Maple Court, Dustless said with emotion. Sarutobi snorted and said, "We came to die? Understand the current situation. You are already a fish on the chopping board, and you still dare to talk nonsense." Waving her Zanpakuto, Sarutobi planned to teach Dustless a lesson. Everyone was angry and no one noticed the faint smile on her mouth. Only Urahara Kisuk saw it clearly. Did this guy deliberately let himself be caught to lure the enemy? Urahara Kisuk was shocked and immediately hurriedly shouted, "Get away from him, he was deliberately subdued by you, the purpose is to lure you over." What a smart man. Unfortunately, it's too late. Taking a deep look at Urahara Kisuk in the distance, Dustless spat out cold air and said, "Tao Breaker 90, Black Coffin." Chapter 1021. Hearing Urahara Kisuk's reminder, everyone was stunned. When they were about to ask, a black demonic brilliance fell from the sky. They looked up at the sky at the same time, and the falling black light made their minds blank. Everyone was sweating for Dustless's madness, including Ri Shiori. "This bastard, he actually used number 90 Hado to attack me?" Staring at the expressionless Dustless, Ri Shiri felt a chill in his heart. A powerful enemy wasn't too scary, but a lunatic who didn't hesitate to perish together with the enemy, everyone would stay at a respectful distance. "Retreat." With a shout, Ri Shiori turned into a rainbow light and retreated. "The power of number 90 Hado is extraordinary. I heard that he has only been a Shinigami for half a year. It seems that he was not lucky to be the captain but real strength." Looking at the light pouring down, Urahara Kisuk felt as if he fell into an ice cave, and his whole body was cold. Looking at Yi of the Four Maple Court, his eyes were full of despair. He knew that it was too late to escape. It happened so suddenly that everyone was destined to tremble under the nightmare of number 90 Hado. Puchi, Puchi, Puchi. The screams of flesh being cut into pieces were endless. The masked army suffered heavy losses. Everyone was dripping with blood, and their bodies were covered with hideous knife wounds. Bang bang bang. Everyone was like a kite with a broken string and they fell powerlessly. Just like Hirako Shinko, they were killed in seconds. I'm fine. Yi of the Four Maple Court said in surprise. She was trampled by the invisible knife of the black coffin, just now, but unexpectedly she was safe and sound in the end. Of course you are my important bargaining chip, Miss Yi. In the sky there was a whisper and warm light particles surged around. Immediately, under the shocked gaze of Urahara Kisuke and Yi of the Four Maple Court, Dustless's body automatically assembled. His face was like a knife, and there was no extra expression on his cold face. Urahara Kisuke and Yi of the Four Maple Court looked at each other, and a strange emotion rose in their hearts at the same time. They did not know why, but he was unscathed by any attack, and it turned from inconceivable to normal. It was not surprising that this thin figure could perform any miracle. Their minds were already numb. Since I can't defeat him, I'll just seal him. A gust of chilly wind blew, and Yi of the Four Maple Courtyard stopped talking abruptly. Her body was covered by some kind of magic power and she couldn't move. At the same time, 5 cold fingers grabbed her throat. Don't act rashly or I will kill you. The person who subdued Yi of the Four Maple Courtyard from behind was Dustless with a cold expression. Hand over the Hogyoku, or I'll send her to heaven immediately. Dustless threatened as the stone in his heart landed safely. Hearing this, Urahara Kisuke's face turned ugly. He raised his voice and scolded, "You are the captain of Soul Society. How dare you threaten others with such despicable means? If you have the guts, let go of Miss Yi and fight me one-on-one." Even with Urahara Kisuke's temper at this moment he was furious. He scolded Dustless for being shameless, ruthless and extremely shameless. Every captain of Soul Society was open and aboveboard. It was unheard of for a captain like Dustless to threaten others with a hostage. Hand over the Hogyoku, don't consider my patience. If you provoke me I will kill the woman as well. Dustless said impatiently with a cold tone. Urahara Kisuke's eyes flickered. After some consideration he resolutely took out the Hogyoku. A shiny sphere was taken out from his clothes. At the moment when it appeared, Wu Chen's eyes stared straight, and there was a burning desire. This kind of artifact that could promote the host to evolve infinitely, everyone coveted and yearned for it. Let go of Miss Yi first or I will destroy it immediately. Don't even think about getting it. Urahara Kisuke threatened and raised the Hogyoku in his hand. Urahara Kisuke held it tightly as if the gorgeous gem would burst if he used a little force. Is that so? Dustless was unmoved and said indifferently, you can try to destroy it if you can. When the Hogyoku came out, Urahara Kisuke tried every means to destroy it, but in the end it was futile. There was no way to destroy the Hogyoku. Urahara Kisuke was just bluffing Dustless. Seeing Dustless's stubbornness, Urahara Kisuke was speechless and had a headache. If I don't let you see how scary I am, you won't give in easily. Staring at Urahara Kisuke's face that never changed, Dustless sneered in his heart. He looked at Yi of Sifin Court in front of him, and his eyes flashed with havoc and teasing. Crack. Dustless tore the clothes of Yi of Sifin Court rudely. His hands went deep into her body and slowly touched her delicate skin. He also showed a satisfied expression, which stimulated Urahara Kisuke's nerves. Bastard, you are looking for death. Urahara Kisuke spat out a mouthful of old blood. His eyes turned scarlet, and his whole body was filled with murderous aura. For the first time in his life he lost his mind. This kid actually took advantage of Yi in front of him. How could he swallow it? You want to fight with me? Seeing Urahara Kisuke's face changing colors, Dustless was very proud. When he was about to go further, Yi of Sifin Court suddenly said something that made Dustless's face turn black. Kisuke, don't worry about me. Quickly take the Hogyoku and leave. I will treat it as if I was bitten by a pig. Yi of Sifin Court was calm and said very casually. I have a lot of special hobbies. If you don't give me the Hogyoku, I will let her have a taste of what it means to beg for death. Dustless heard this and deliberately showed a wretched smile, which was very evil. Then he put his nose close to Yi of Sifin Court and sniffed the body fragrance of Yi of Sifin Court. His face was dull and his head was dizzy. He looked at Yi who was sweating and almost fainted. F***ck, why is she so smelly? Chapter 1022. Although Wu Chen's voice was very soft, Yi of the Four Maple Courtyard heard it clearly. She immediately blushed and expressed that she was innocent. He couldn't blame her for sweating, right? But then the embarrassment in his heart was annihilated by the monstrous flame. After taking advantage of others, Wu Chen's face was full of disgust, as if he had been greatly insulted. Yi of the Four Maple Courtyard was instantly furious. "Brat, when I have the chance I will definitely kill you and humiliate you." Yi glared and warned fiercely. Dustless didn't even look at her. He was thinking of a countermeasure. He only yearned for the Hogyoko. "If you know what's good for you, give it to me. Don't seek your own death." Dustless raised his voice and scolded. At the same time he retracted his hand that was close to Yi's nose. She couldn't stand the stench of sweat. His hands continued to grope inside Yi's body and made exaggerated movements to provoke Urahara Kisuk. "I have to calm down. He is doing this on purpose. I can't be fooled." Urahara Kisuk took a deep breath and reminded himself. The flames in his eyes gradually extinguished. He was like a monk who had no desires and no desires. This brat's willpower is so strong. He can still endure teasing his girlfriend? Dustless couldn't help but be stunned. He felt that it was unbelievable. If it was him, he would have already blasted Urahara Kisuk to smithereens. Don't compare Kisuk with an ordinary person like you. When Four Maple Courtyard's knight saw Urahara Kisuk's calm demeanor, he arrogantly said to Wu Qin, "Your despicable plan is far from enough to sway Kisuk's mentality." Dustless couldn't deny her words. He echoed, "Indeed, it's far from enough. Since you think I'm too kind, then I'll go even further." Dustless's eyes shot out the light of desire. He suddenly formed a seal with one hand and shouted, "Shadow clone technique." Bang bang bang. A few figures that looked exactly like Dustless suddenly appeared. They were holding all kinds of tools in their hands. Video camera? Urahara Kisuk frowned as he looked at the shadow doppelgangers that suddenly appeared. Having lived in the modern world for decades, he was very clear about this kind of thing. TSK. Although she's a bit smelly, her skin is a bit darker, and her temper is a bit worse, she'll still be the same after a bit of adjustment, teaching and turning off the lights. Dustless's wolf-like eyes circled around Yi of the Four Maple Courtyard. From time to time he would let out a horrifying laugh. Urahara Kisuk's heart skipped a beat. He realized that something was wrong and asked with a livid face, "What do you want to do?" "It's useless to threaten me. It's best not to waste your energy." "Is that so?" Hearing this, Dustless looked at Urahara Kisuk playfully and immediately said to himself, "I heard that money is indispensable in this world. Unfortunately, I come from Soul Society, so I naturally don't have that kind of paper money. I don't want to go back to Soul Society recently, so it's inevitable to make some extra money." After saying that, Wu Qin looked at Urahara Kisuk, and then pretended to be wretched and said, "Although I'm the captain, I'm a law-abiding person. It's impossible for me to rob her, so I can only count on Miss Yuri to cooperate with me to make some money. Don't you understand, Manager Urahara?" Hearing this, Urahara Kisuk frowned tightly. He really didn't understand Dustless's meaning. This despicable person is even more shameless than Aizen Sosuke. What is he planning? Urahara Kisuk's mood changed. He suddenly felt that the previous Aizen was too cute. At the very least, Aizen wouldn't do such a despicable and shameless thing. This scene seems to have been played in some TV series. A few people with cameras, a man with a wretched smile, and a weak girl who can make some extra money. Urahara Kisuk had a feeling of déjà vu. He scratched his head and looked at Yi, who was wearing revealing clothes, and a horrible thought flashed in his mind. "If you dare to do that, I will tear you into pieces." After thinking about what Dustless said, Urahara Kisuk's eyes were burning, and his whole body was trembling with anger. "You finally understand what I'm talking about. That's right, we're going to shoot an AV. I'm the male lead, so Yi can only be the female lead." Dustless admitted without hesitation and then ordered the shadow clones, "When we shoot, remember to make sure I'm pixelated. But this stubborn girl can't be pixelated. Not only that, but we also need to change her camera to 800 pixels. Every part of her must be shot clearly to benefit the whole human race." "Understood." The shadow clones nodded and promised. "Bastard, I'll kill you." These words angered Urahara Kisuk. His body, which was standing in the sky, almost couldn't support himself and fell to the ground. "Bastard!" Yi of the Four Maple Courtyard flew into a rage and roared word by word. He was so angry that his face turned red, and there was clear fear in his eyes. If Wu Qin really did that, it would be worse than killing her 10,000 times. You think this is over? People like me like to treat all kinds of stubborn people. Dustless sneered and then said bluntly, "After shooting, I will sell it to Soul Society. The passion of one of the 4 noble families in Soul Society, hee. There must be a lot of people who are tempted." Urahara Kisuk and Yi of Saifeng's both vomited blood. Holding the Hogyoku in his hand tightly, Urahara Kisuk didn't dare to gamble. Even if Dustless was lying, he didn't dare to gamble. Otherwise, Yi of Saifeng's would definitely lose his reputation, be despised by everyone, and Saifeng's would become the laughingstock of the entire Soul Society. And Dustless with pixelated face would definitely be fine. Chapter 1023. Dustless smiled proudly, looking at the constipated Urahara Kisuk. He was in a particularly good mood. The most despicable way is often the most effective. For people like Urahara Kisuk, the simple oppression of force can't force him to surrender, only the most vulgar means will work. "Why are you still going to insist, Miss Yori?" Dustless smiled frivolously, and even because his acting was too realistic, saliva overflowed from the corner of his mouth. It was very wretched, and Yori of the Four Maple Court felt cold all over. Glancing at Urahara Kisuk, Yori of the Four Maple Court fell silent. Still hesitating, Wu Qin sneered and shouted at the top of his voice, "Since that's the case, goodbye, Manager Urahara." After that, the void around Dustless began to distort and change. Kemue. A vortex began to slowly devour the bodies of Dustless and Yori of the Four Maple Court, and the latter half of their bodies gradually disappeared. Urahara Kisuk tensed up, and when Yori of the Four Maple Court disappeared, his nerves also tensed up. Until Yori of the Four Maple Court completely disappeared, he finally couldn't hold back. "Take it." The shiny glowing ball was thrown out and Dustless caught it very easily. At the same time, taking advantage of Dustless's distraction, Yori of the Four Maple Court broke free from the shackles. "Is this Hogyoku?" Dustless looked at the ball in his hand absent-mindedly, feeling the cool body temperature and felt a little dry. Hogyoku is an extremely heaven-defying existence. As long as the host feels the threat of death and the will in his heart has been firm and unwilling to give up, it will continue to evolve, and there seems to be no limit. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A strange wind and wave attracted Dustless's attention, and the sky was dark, and he was shocked to find that thousands of blades were aimed at him. "Yes, I can use Hado number 91, so I can definitely use Hado number 90. Looking up at the falling cold light, Dustless muttered to himself. Urahara Kisuk snorted coldly, showing his murderous intent, and said hoarsely, "Hogyoku is not so easy to take. If you want to take it, at least leave something for me." Immediately afterward, there was a loud roar and the sky twisted. Tao Breaker's 90 black coffins. The sharp intersecting blades shone with cold light, and the center point was Dustless. Because of the Hogyoku, Dustless was distracted for a moment, so he was hit directly. Puchi, puchi, puchi. Dustless's complete body immediately had many cracks, but the effect was negligible. After a flash of light, Dustless recovered perfectly. "That's fast," Dustless said in surprise. He had a new understanding of Urahara Ki's run-up ability. Not only him, but also Yi of the Four Maple Court and the Megami Corps that had been heavily injured before had all disappeared. His running speed made Dustless feel ashamed of his inferiority. Next, East Deity wants that half of the Hogyoku. Chapter 1024. Dustless stepped into Hueco Mundo, and Four Maple Court's Night Cat also stepped into Soul Society. According to Urahara Kisuk's plan, he told Aizen Sosuke everything. Of course, Four Maple Court wasn't an idiot. If he told Aizen directly, it would arouse his suspicions. Instead, he used multiple channels to let Jin know, and then passed it to Aizen through Jin's mouth. Bang, bang, bang. In the dark laboratory, there was the sound of porcelain breaking, and there were more pieces of porcelain on the ground. So that's how it is. I thought Urahara was the only one who had the same idea as me. Who would have thought that there would be a stronger opponent on this thorny road? Aizen muttered to himself with an expressionless Sosuke as his spiritual pressure surged and he easily crushed the cup. Captain Aizen is angry? That's rare. Ikamaru Jin looked at the gloomy Aizen in surprise. He rarely got angry and he never showed his emotions. No one knew what Aizen was thinking. No, Captain Aizen is just happy. Ikamaru Jin caught the subtle smile on Aizen's face and shook his head to deny his previous thoughts. Being able to find an opponent is something to be excited about. Those days of being lonely at the top and looking down on all the other mountains are actually quite painful. Silver. Sosuke Aizen was very interested in this fight. He was always disappointed that he couldn't find an opponent. He thought that Urahara Kisuke would be able to compete with him. But who would have thought that Urahara Kisuke would be able to play with him? Urahara Kisuke left Aizen's sight forever. He ran to the outside world and hid like a mouse. God is really good to me, sending me another opponent, Aizen said in a low voice. He clenched his fists and looked at the sky, thanking the heavens. Captain Aizen. Seeing this, Ikamaru Jin couldn't help but stand up and remind them, "We've fought with Captain Wuxian many times, but it seems like we've been tricked by him every time. So far, we haven't taken advantage of him even once." So what? A momentary loss and victory doesn't mean anything. Sosuke Aizen's mouth twitched as he said calmly. Seeing how happy Aizen was, Jin had to remind him, "East Sensei is still in Hueco Mundo, that guy is also in Hueco Mundo if he catches us and finds Hogyoku." Speaking of this, Jin looked at Aizen Sosuke, waiting for him to make a decision. What's there to worry about? Isn't that great? Aizen wasn't angry. Instead he looked forward to it. We've been researching hollows for almost 100 years, but we haven't made much progress. If Captain Dustless can create something that can break through hollows, then we'll have to thank him. Hearing this, the smile on Jin's face disappeared as he sensed the hidden meaning in Aizen's words. He said in surprise, "Captain Aizen, are you going to ignore that guy? I don't think that's a good idea. If he takes away the Hengyu, our plan, which has been painstakingly planned for hundreds of years, will go down the drain." "Jin, don't worry." Aizen's voice was soft and gentle, but his expression was frosty. "Once he creates a perfect Hogyoku, we can take advantage of the situation. Even if he fails, I can still use Kyoka Suigetsu to control the Central Room 46 and order Soul Society to capture him. No matter what, victory is in our hands. We can just sit back and watch." Ikamaru Jin nodded in agreement. "What about Captain East Sensei?" Ikamaru Jin suddenly asked. The gap between East Sengoku and Dustless was too big. If they were to encounter each other, they would definitely be mercilessly suppressed and killed. "You mean you want it?" Sosuke Aizen narrowed his eyes, radiating a cold light as he said indifferently, "It's up to the heavens to plan. Everyone's fate is the same. If East Sensei survives, it means he's blessed by God. If he's unfortunately killed, he can only blame himself for not being strong enough." His words determined East Sensei's fate. Sosuke Aizen wasn't only cruel to his subordinates, he was also cruel to his own people. Once someone was no longer useful, he would kill them without hesitation. Of course, Aizen's success had a lot to do with his ruthless personality. However, if we ignore Dongxian, the Hogyoku will definitely be taken away by Captain Wuxian in the end. If he fuses with the Hogyoku, the situation will be very bad for us. Dustless's strength was unfathomable. If he got the Hogyoku, he would be like a tiger with wings. There was no need to fight him, they could just prepare a suitable coffin. "Don't worry, Jin." Aizen's voice was full of magic and his eyes were full of wisdom. Ikamaru Jin's restless heart calmed down for a moment. "If we can't do it, we can use Kyoka Suigetsu to command the entire Shinigami." Aizen touched his glasses and continued, "Even if we can't do it, we still have those guys." Jin's eyes lit up. "Captain Aizen, are you talking about Team Zero?" Aizen smiled and said calmly, "Yes, it's them. If Squad Zero can be controlled well, they will be our best fighter. They can help me teach that arrogant brat a lesson. He has ruined my plans time and time again. Sometimes, enemies could be used. The key was the method." Chapter 1025. Aizen's eyes shone brightly, his entire body brimming with vitality. His confident appearance made others involuntarily submit to him, and the entire world instantly became his stage. From beginning to end, Jin was the only one in the audience. "Keep an eye on Dustless. Once he takes East Sensei's Hogyoku, our plan will begin." Aizen walked out of the dark laboratory with Ikamaru following behind him. When there were a lot of people, Aizen and Jin went into acting mode. Jin had a cunning smile, while Aizen had an expression that said he would rather die than be involved in the same situation as Sosuke. In front of outsiders, Aizen and Jin continued to be hostile. 3 days later in Hueco Mundo in an unknown cave. "Did East Sensei find where he hid the Hogyoku?" Dustless asked impatiently after Hellable appeared. Hellable nodded. "Master, don't worry. I got the news that East Sensei hid the Hogyoku in a room in Lost Yi Temple. After Bailigan died, East Sensei, who was kicked out of Soul Society by Dustless, became the uncrowned king. He even built the majestic Lost Yi Temple. Of course he was still Aizen's subordinate. Hearing this, Wuchen was not happy. Instead, he was puzzled and said, Hogyoku is a top-secret material. How could the East deity let you get the information so easily? Hannibal had only pledged allegiance to Dustless for 3 days, which meant that she could find out the location of the Hogyoku in 3 days at most. Such a short period of time was unscientific. Master, you mean? Hannibal frowned. She thought it was strange. Occasionally, it would take a few hours to find someone in the huge Las Noches palace. Hannibal didn't even need 3 days because she had spent 2 days just waiting for Dustless. In other words, Hannibal found out about the Hogyoku in 1 day. That Hogyoku is very likely to be fake. It's used to test the loyalty of you great void masters. Understanding flashed in his eyes. Wuchen affirmed. Sensei and Aizen weren't idiots. The Hogyoku wouldn't let hollows touch it. Those two are despicable. Hannibal scolded. She almost stole it. If she was caught, Sensei would kill her without mercy. Sensei is meticulous. It's impossible to get him to hand over the Hogyoku, Hannibal said. Hearing this, Wuchen smiled mysteriously. With an unfathomable expression, he said methodically, Don't worry about such trivial matters. If there is no way, we can create a way. Let East deity take the initiative to lead us to get the Hogyoku. Who has a problem with Aizen or East Senpai? Do you want to be a traitor? Dustless suddenly asked. Hannibal lowered her head and pondered. Her mind filtered through all the great voids of Las Noches, and an arrogant face appeared in her mind. Grimjiao, he is the one who complains the most, and the one who can't get along with East deity the most. With a sinister smile, Dustless said coldly, In that case, I choose Grimjiao. 1 day later in Void Palace. Capture hollows for experiments and give them to those bastards. Sensei wants that guy. In the vast desert, a man with blue hair looked arrogant and dissatisfied. He scolded, I have to do the work of those trash. If there's a chance, I must let Sensei. Do you know why you're doing the work of those trash? Means you're trash too. This job suits you, haha. Countless photons floated in the sky and condensed into Dustless's face. Looking at it, the person who complained about Sensei was Grimju. Bastard, who are you calling trash? Grimju was furious. He blew out a violent Ryatsu storm toward Dustless. You're playing with fire. Do you know what happens when you provoke the death god? Your soul will be destroyed. You're as arrogant as Hannibal said. Dustless nodded slightly in his heart, ignoring the oncoming Ryatsu, then smiled and said, What a coincidence, I'm a death god. Raising 5 fingers, Dustless shook them and said indifferently, Trash like you within 5 moves? Oh no, 5 moves is too much for you. Shaking his head decisively, Dustless closed 3 fingers, shook the remaining 2 fingers and said, With only 2 moves, I can let you go to heaven. As soon as he finished speaking, the furious Grimju rushed over. So slow. Looking at the explosion sweeping toward him, this exaggerated lightning-like speed was as slow as a turtle crawling in Dustless's eyes. Hades 63, Thunder Roar Cannon. A ray of rainbow light flashed and dangerous energy fluctuations lingered in the palm of his hand. After a little preparation, it stood out. Boom, boom. Grimju, who was blinded by anger, was hit one by one. The powerful explosion seriously injured him. His whole body was blasted black and emitted the smell of barbecue. How can such a low-level Hades kill me? It's reasonable to say that it can't even break through my steel skin. Grimju was shocked. He moved his body a little and the tingling pain spread all over his body. There were wounds all over his body and blood overflowed from them. He stared blankly at Dustless. When did this kind of low-level Hades, which had no effect on the Great Void, become so powerful? Didn't I say before you are trash so a low-level Hades can kill you? Dustless looked up at the sky, his nostrils facing Grimju, and his arrogant expression silently told him that looking at Grimju made him feel dirty. You forced me to do this. Being so mercilessly mocked by Dustless, Grimju, who had a bad temper, was furious and used one of his strongest moves without mercy. A blue flash appeared in the palm of his hand, and its size continued to grow. Void Flash? Ignoring the existence of the energy ball, he looked down at Grimju as if he was looking at a bug. Chapter 1026. Flashes of light cut through the sky above the sky and it was very gorgeous. Wherever it passed, Ryatsu was burning, which was particularly spectacular and shocking. However, this was the fire of Grimjiao's anger. Shame, hatred, unwillingness, fear. All kinds of negative emotions filled Grimjiao's mind. He was so angry that blood oozed out of his gums, and his teeth were about to break from clenching them. Boom, boom. The unhappy Grimjiao struggled to hit the ground with void flash to vent his inner depression. Thousands of negative emotions gathered in his body and mind, and Grimjiao's whole body was about to explode, and his Ryatsu went berserk. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A shocking divine rainbow swept over from afar, and Grimjiao, who noticed it, immediately returned to normal, with a little confusion on his face. He was familiar with this unusually powerful Ryatsu. Her libel? After confirming that it was her libel, Grimjiao sneered, and his sneer was full of disdain. Although her libel was a vasto Todd, she belonged to the female Hueco Mundo and was not welcomed in the entire Hueco Mundo, even if she was a vasto Todd. By the way, I can work with her libel to deal with that guy. Thinking of Dustless, Grimjiao's calm expression immediately became ferocious. He was beaten by Dustless and lost an arm, so he hated Dustless to the bone, and even had the impulse to perish together with Dustless. Wiping the sweat from his face, Grimjiao remained calm. He valued his face more than his life, so he didn't want her libel to see him in such a sorry state. Her libel, a reaper is attacking. The unstoppable golden light approached Grimjiao, and without showing signs of stopping, instead, it increased the eruption of Ryatsu, and slender legs kicked towards Grimjiao's face. Bang, bang, bang. Caught off guard, Grimjiao was directly blasted down, smashing a large deep pit and eating a mouthful of sand. Give me an explanation. Otherwise, even if you are a confidant of Aizen and East Senpai, I will kill you. Grimjiao roared hysterically, his sad tone full of endless killing intent. It was very difficult for him to speak and he was choking. Widening his eyes, Grimjiao was shocked to find that one of Hurlabel's feet was stepping on his face and blocking his mouth. What a great humiliation. Even if you are Aizen's confidant, I will kill you. Grimjiao, whose expression changed greatly, said coldly. The remaining Ryatsu in his body surged and he planned to go all out. His only remaining arm had already condensed void flash. You're really weak. Other than putting on airs, you're completely useless. Narrowing her eyes and looking at Grimjiao's twisted face with disdain, Hellable had a look of pity on her face. At the same time, a bright golden light swept out from the soles of her feet. Ka. The foot that stepped on Grimjiao's face instantly became hundreds of times heavier, crushing the ground and breaking Grimjiao's nose. Impossible. Vastolord, how did your spiritual pressure become so much stronger? It's much stronger than Ulquiora's. Feeling the spiritual pressure that was about to crush the world, Grimjiao roared in disbelief. And where is the void mask on your face? In fact, due to excessive shock, both of their eyes were wide open. Short-sighted rats deserve to be abandoned. Hellable sneered again and again, her unique Zanpakuto was raised and her eyes were cold. Obviously she was going to kill Grimjiao with one strike. If you kill me, Aizen and East Sensei will not let you go. Grimjiao, who forced himself to calm down, threatened. Hellable's eyes flashed with a sneer. Reorganizing her thoughts, Hellable remembered Dustless's previous instructions and said, the one who ordered me to kill you is actually East Sensei-sama. Looking at the bruised Grimjiao, Hellable said coldly, a jutsus is always a jutsus. You are not qualified to follow Aizen-sama. People like you can only use it once and then throw it into the garbage dump. Is the strengthening of your spiritual pressure also related to Aizen? Grimjiao suppressed the anger in his heart and asked in a low voice. Yes. Hellable said respectfully, all of this is thanks to Aizen-sama and East Sensei-sama. All of Vasto Lord underwent the second, Hogyoku, transformation, and their abilities in all aspects have skyrocketed. They have also taken off the void mask, and their spiritual pressure has also skyrocketed. There was no doubt that these were all nonsense taught by Dustless to Hellable. The reason why the mask could be taken off was actually because of the truth-seeking ball. The skyrocketing of spiritual pressure was even simpler. Using half of the Hogyoku taken from Urahara Kisuk to strengthen Hellable's soul. Grimjiao's face was pale and he felt betrayed. Their group of Ajuchas had only experienced the Hogyoku transformation once. As expected of a leopard, a fierce predator is really easy to deceive. Hellable secretly thought, and suddenly felt that Grimjiao was extremely naive. He was obviously just an insignificant insect, but sometimes he disobeyed the orders of Aizen and East Sensei. If it weren't for the fact that this ant still had some value, he might have been obliterated by Aizen. Anyway, you Ajuchas are just abandoned pawns. It's normal to use the Hogyoku transformation once. You should feel honored. It's a waste to use the incredible power of the Hogyoku on you. It's a stain on the power of the gods. Hellable said coldly, degrading Ajuchas as worthless. You can become stronger again because of the so-called hogyoku. Grimjiao's expression was extremely ugly, and the corner of his eyes was replaced by cunning. He thought greedily in his heart, if I can get that hogyoku, I will definitely be able to advance to Vasto Lord or even surpass that level. Even Aizen and Shinigami won't be in my eyes. Although this faint change flashed by, Hannibal still clearly caught it, and immediately sighed at the success of Dustless's plan. Chapter 1027. The purpose of Dustless beating Grimjiao before was to make him aware of his vulnerability, and then Hannibal came out to strike Grimjiao's confidence, which was actually arranged in advance. All in all, it was to let Grimjiao steal the hogyoku, and Dustless finally reaped the benefits. Looking at Grimjiao's broken arm, Hannibal sighed at Dustless's unparalleled calculation, and deliberately said, Ulquiorra has been baptized by the hogyoku and gained the ability of super regeneration. Thump. Grimjiao's dead heart suddenly beat rapidly, and he felt a burst of excitement. If he gets the hogyoku, his destroyed arm may be saved this time. No, I absolutely can't die in this place. Las Noches Palace is close at hand. I want to get the hogyoku, dominate Hueco Mundo, and wipe out Soul Society. His eyes bloomed with strong vitality, and any creature in a critical situation will erupt with incredible power. Boom. Boom. Under the stimulation of the hogyoku, Grimjiao immediately burst out with unprecedented ryatsu, and miraculously forced Hannibal to retreat, and then used all his strength to rush to the sky. Whoosh. Boom. Boom. After a few void flashes, Hannibal turned a deaf ear to it. Out of sight, out of mind, she simply let Grimjiao leave. TSK. That kid was so angry he probably stole the hogyoku. If East Sage knew that Grimjiao betrayed her for no reason, she would probably vomit blood in anger. After a few breaths, there was a burst of gloating laughter, and then Dustless fell from the sky. For no reason? Hannibal was speechless as she looked at Dustless, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Grimjiao's current appearance was all calculated by Dustless. After experiencing a huge blow, the strength that he had always served betrayed him. No matter who it was, their temperament would change drastically like Grimjiao's. Looking as far as the eye could see, Grimjiao, who was 100 miles away, was right in front of him. Dustless frowned and said, I deliberately destroyed one of his arms to make Grimjiao have hope in the hogyoku, but now he is running so slowly, indicating that the blow to him was not enough. If his other arm was destroyed just now, he would be full of motivation. Dustless's self-mocking made Hannibal break out in a cold sweat. What's the next step, young master? Herlibel blinked and asked expectantly. This series of developments was just as Dustless had predicted. It's very simple. Grimjiao can't steal the Hogjades openly. He will definitely sneak into Las Noches Palace secretly. My shadow clone has been observing Grimjiao's movements. When he succeeds in stealing the Hogjades, I will send my shadow clone to inform you. At that time you will rush over with East Sage. Hannibal's eyes lit up. The strategy was not bad. It could improve her relationship with East Deity. In the future, East Deity might ask Hannibal for any secret missions. But at that time it would be exposed. Suddenly sensing that something was wrong, Hannibal said, East Deity's betrayal of Grimjiao was made up by the young master. Once they meet, the truth will be revealed. Hearing this, Dustless had expected this and said confidently, It's very simple. Just let East Deity see Grimjiao steal the Hogjades, and then I will kill Grimjiao myself, not giving him a chance to speak. Hannibal could gain trust, and Dustless could also steal the Hogjades, killing two birds with one stone. Damn East Deity, damn Aizen Sosuke, when I get that Hogjades I will definitely teach you two a lesson. Taking advantage of the short gap between shifts, Grimjiao slipped into the secret room where the Hogjades were stored. While cursing Aizen in his heart, he searched for the Hogjades with all his might. Found it. A unique flash in the darkness attracted Grimjiao's attention. After a moment of joy, he quickly ran over and held the mysterious bead with both hands excitedly. This feeling, it's not right. He had been transformed by the Hogjades before, and Grimjiao also had an impression of it. Although the bead in front of him had the same energy nature as the Hogjades, its power was 1,000 miles away. Grimjiao, you disappoint me so much. There was a burst of explosion and the closed door was turned into dust by the impact. East Deity appeared with a gloomy face, followed by Hannibal. When Grimjiao invaded Las Noches, Dustless's shadow clone informed Hannibal. And after Hannibal received the news from Dustless, she immediately went to inform East Deity, asking Grimjiao to be compassionate and seize the hogjades. East deity, who was skeptical, rushed over just in time to see this scene in front of him. Aizen-sama has been very kind to you, and you dare to betray us. East deity spoke with anger, and his zanpakuto was unsheathed, intending to clean up the mess. Everyone hates traitors. Hearing this, Grimjiao sneered again and again. It was obvious that East deity sent Hellable to kill him, but now he slandered him as a traitor. Outrageous. Even if you are shameless, you can't be so shameless. Grimjiao argued with reason and said with a cold expression, you are really good at reversing right and wrong. You are the ones who mercilessly abandoned Grimjiao. Aizen-sama has been very kind to you, and you dare to betray us. You have the ambition of a wolf. Without giving Grimjiao a chance to speak, Hellable said fiercely. Grimjiao opened his mouth and was petrified, cursing Hellable in his heart. She said that East deity was going to send someone to kill him, but now she changed her words and denied it. When he was about to question Hellable in the darkness, a cold light swept across, and Grimjiao lost the chance to speak forever. Puchi. Grimjiao's head was separated from his body, and his neck was like a fountain of blood. It was a fatal blow. Chapter 1028. This sudden scene caused everyone to be stunned. They looked at each other in dismay before looking at the figure in the darkness at the same time. It's you? East Senpai, who was the first to react, glared at him. He clenched his fists and said coldly, there is a path to heaven, but you don't want to take it. There is no door to hell, but you insist on barging in. Don't forget whose territory Las Noches Palace is. Pa pa pa. The sound of footsteps came from the darkness, and a figure stepped out from it, revealing a smile like a spring breeze. So what if it's your territory? There is no place in this world that I can't go. Facing the murderous gazes, Wu Qin appeared to be at ease. He merely glanced at the great void realm experts who were glaring at him covetously and ignored them. He's just a captain. How dare he be so arrogant when he barged into Las Noches Palace alone? He doesn't think that we are on the same level as that idiot Grimjiao, does he? He can kill us if he wants to. We have more people, this captain will definitely die. The great voids discussed with each other and clamored to teach Dustless a lesson, but they didn't dare to do anything. Their eyes were fixed on East Senpai. His expression was full of hatred and he didn't dare to do anything. Obviously he was very wary of Dustless. Cough cough cough, clearing his throat slightly, Dustless said, call out, Hogyoku, this is the order of the head captain. East Senpai was indifferent and sneered, head captain? That's your death god's head captain, it has nothing to do with me. Dustless's expression was indifferent. He was waiting for him to say this. After I catch you, I'll directly extract your memory. Clean, simple and fast. Seeing that East Senpai was stubbornly resisting, Dustless immediately gave up the idea of attacking him verbally. There was no need to waste his breath on this kind of person who was loyal to Aizen. Remove all the restrictions I gave you before, and kill him with all your strength. East Senpai waved his hand and ordered with great momentum. Boom boom boom. Boom boom boom. Boom boom boom. Hearing this group of great void realm cultivators who were scrambling to flatter Jianghu, seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. Their spiritual pressure leaked out in an unstoppable manner, converging into a vast sea of spiritual pressure and pressing down on Jianghu. Ka ka ka. Dustless's body instantly cracked, visible to the naked eye. His entire body was in a mess, and the cracks devoured his entire body without any pattern. Can't even withstand a single blow. Upon seeing this, the great void realm experts were incomparably disappointed. Their eyes became dim and lifeless. They originally thought that they would be able to display their strength in front of a powerful enemy, but who would have thought that it would be so weak, shattering with a single touch? A bunch of idiots, all of you attacked together. Back then, he was the one who chased me out of Soul Society. Seeing the great void masters relax, East Deity raised her voice to warn them. He shook his head and whispered, no wonder Lord Aizen wants to use these voids as pawns. Vasto Lord is no exception. East Sensei agreed with Aizen. Hollows were arrogant and looked down on everyone. It wasn't their fault, it was their nature. They couldn't change this bad habit, they were born with it. So dazzling. In the dark space where they couldn't even see their own fingers, an unusual flash of light suddenly appeared. It was so dazzling that all the great void masters instinctively closed their eyes. The unique perception of the void spread out. They could only sense that Dustless's body was unharmed. What kind of joke is this? Wasn't he torn apart? Maybe it's some other strange ability. Isn't this kid wearing the captain's haori? He should belong to one of the captains. He must have learned Bankai. Maybe it's his Bankai ability. How can the god of death have an ability like super regeneration? He's not a great void. The great void masters were discussing in surprise. Taking advantage of this, Dustless condensed a large amount of light in his hand and shot it out. Yasakani no Magatama. Bang bang bang. There were many of them and they were powerful. They were extremely fast. Many great void masters didn't even have time to react before they were swallowed by the golden rainstorm. One by one they knelt on the ground in agony. Their faces were filled with fear and extreme pain. Hundreds of holes appeared on their bodies. It was no different from being cut into pieces. Useless trash, what's the use of having you? Seeing this, East Deity Yao revealed his killing intent. He threw out a pink disc of flame in his hand. The target was the great void masters who were howling in pain. Path of destruction, waste flame. Boom boom boom. The pink flame exploded. In an instant the dark room was lit up, and a big hole appeared on the roof. The cold East Deity Yao wanted to kill all the great void masters in one fell swoop. You don't show any mercy to yourself, Captain East Deity. Oh no. Dustless, who realized his mistake, immediately corrected himself. He said apologetically, "It's more appropriate to call you the King of Hueco Mundo." However, East Deity Yao didn't appreciate it. He didn't have time to play with Dustless. Towards the person in front of him who he wanted to kill even in his dreams, East Deity Yao only had one feeling, and that was hatred. It was hatred that went deep into his body, deep into his organs and deep into his soul. If you're willing to kowtow and admit your mistake and agree to be my subordinate, I will reluctantly let you go. East Deity Yao, who was about to attack, remembered Aizen's words. Aizen also wanted to persuade Dustless to give up the darkness and join the light. It would be best if he could surrender. East Deity Yao didn't like Aizen's idea. He thought it was ridiculous. He might even be humiliated by Dustless. God was very kind to East Deity Yao. His idea came true immediately. Your hollow mundo looks like a cricket. It's ugly and disgusting, but if you're willing to be my mount, I will be merciful and let you go. Chapter 1029. You look like you can turn into a cricket. Although it's ugly and disgusting, if you are willing to be my mount, I will be merciful and let you go. Hearing this, East Senyao directly vomited blood, and his eyes were filled with stars. He regretted it so much. He knew that he should not talk nonsense with Dustless, this kind of person whose head was made of stone. Talking to this kind of unenlightened person was only asking for humiliation. The things that you have taken away, I will definitely take them back with double today. Rolling his eyes, East Deity Yao said while gritting his teeth and emitting a monstrous killing intent. What I took? That's a lot. Hearing this, Dustless lazily stretched, but he still couldn't help but ask curiously, power, wealth, Hogyoku, fame? I took too many things. What are you talking about? East Senyao snorted, that's none of my business. Today I will take your life. Boom boom boom. The moment his voice fell, a vast and unparalleled Ryatsu began to rampage. In an instant he moved to another planet. It was extremely difficult to walk in this world and it became 10 times heavier. Frowning slightly, Dustless knew that this was an illusion brought by East Senyo's Ryatsu. It was just a deterrent. Ka. The floor under Dustless's feet exploded, and his whole body began to sink. You should have a hard time moving like this. East Senyao laughed proudly and his tone was carefree. Ever since they met Dustless, the tragedy of Aizen's group began. No matter if it was a coincidence or fate, their plans were all vaguely destroyed by Dustless. They suffered losses and were slapped in the face every time. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A flash of light appeared and attracted East Deity's attention. He raised his head to look, but his pupils were filled with the flash of light. He didn't know when the elusive Wu Chen had appeared in front of him. Of course there was also a heavy punch. Bang bang bang. East Senyao, who was caught off guard, was sent flying. A big hole appeared in the dark Loss Yi Palace, and it became much brighter. He didn't react to my Ryatsu? What kind of monster is this guy? Dong Xianyao's face was covered in blood, and his nose had been flattened by Dustless. Staring at the cold and thin back, he said in a surprised tone, after being strengthened by the Hogyoku, even if it's just a completed Hogyoku, my Ryatsu is completely different from before. Even Vasto Lord felt uncomfortable facing me, and I can easily suppress him. Idiot, Dustless sneered again and again. His tone was full of disdain as he said bluntly, "Your spiritual pressure is indeed stronger than mine, but spiritual pressure alone cannot determine the outcome of a battle." Although the ten-tailed dustless chakra had unlimited spiritual pressure, it was indeed limited. You're still far from it. Looking at the imposing and magnificent endless night palace, Dustless felt particularly unhappy, and an indescribable sense of disgust rose in his heart. A mere lackey actually built such a majestic palace. It was really unforgivable. Chakra erupted, and Dustless's body flashed with a dazzling light. The two-faced, four-armed monster covered Dustless's body, and made the same hand seals as Dustless. Tenebrous tremor star. Regardless of whether he was jealous or envious, Dustless felt uncomfortable in his heart. It was just a lackey, and the dog shed should be his final destination. At the same time, the outside of Endless Night Palace suddenly became pitch black, and the wandering great voids all looked at the depths of the sky. The perception of voids was different from ordinary people, and the falling super meteorite made all the creatures tremble in fear. Who is it that has done such a heinous thing? They have provoked the wrath of the gods. Why are you still talking? Hurry up and run. That kind of thing, only a great void like Vastolord can get rid of it. Countless panicked screams could be heard coming from the usually strictly disciplined virtual night palace. Soon after, countless great void beings fled in all directions. Their fearful appearance made the East deity very angry. Useless trash, you're actually scared away by this kind of thing, be careful of your lives. Dong Xianyao shouted loudly, and his voice carried the fluctuation of spiritual pressure, and it resounded in the sky within a radius of 10 miles, rupturing the eardrums of all the escaping great voids, and their bodies were split into two as if they were hacked to death. Good for nothing, fence-sitter. Dong Xianyao gritted his teeth and roared. His tone was filled with endless murderous intent and hatred. If you have the time to worry about others, why don't you worry about your own situation? A cold wind swept over with a powerful force, but Dong Xianyao was indifferent. No matter how he was attacked, he could not be killed, and his super regeneration ability could ignore all attacks. Even if it was destroyed, it could be repaired. Lightspeed kick. The destructive fluctuation came from behind, and Dong Xianyao stood still. There was no need for him to run, as he could withstand this kind of attack with his physical body. Boom boom boom. An ear-piercing roar came from the sky, and the violent vibration made people deaf. Dong Xianyao, who was standing still in the flame, still did not have any reaction. It has completely surpassed the dimension of death and void. Seeing this, Dustless gently nodded, and had a new understanding of the Hogyoku, a heaven-defying material. Dong Xianyao was only borrowing the power of the Hogyoku, and had not completely integrated with it and could not evolve, but his strength was enough to crush the captain class and Vastolord. And this was still a half-finished Hogyoku. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At this moment, a strange fluctuation came from Dustless's body, and a mysterious blue light was emitted, and a mysterious special spiritual pressure overflowed. This is the Hogyoku. Looking at his chest in shock, Dustless's mind came up with an extremely absurd idea. The Hogyoku that he snatched was constantly leaking out mysterious spiritual pressure. Dustless's spiritual pressure, which was originally at the bottom, was suddenly restored. Chapter 1030. The meteorite fell, and the outside of Las Noches Palace was in an uproar. Dustless and Dong Xianyao were in a dead silence. Dong Xianyao, who was confronting Dustless, was even more alert. His clothes were stained with sweat and he was very nervous. Dustless was the strongest enemy he had ever encountered. Could it be an illusion? That strange fluctuation of Ryatsu just now was unusual. Dong Xianyao thought in his heart. Dustless gave him the feeling of a bottomless reservoir with little Ryatsu left. But who would have thought that in an instant, his Ryatsu was filled to the brim? It's really a good thing, TSK. But it's a pity that it's only a half-finished product. If it's complete, once the host feels fear or death, it will evolve to a higher realm. Dustless sighed in his heart. He felt the steady flow of Ryatsu in his body. He moved his muscles and bones comfortably, and there was a crackling sound of bones. His eyes were like torches as he stared at Dong Xianyao, and a thought-provoking smile appeared on his face. It should be two Hogyoku that resonated. TSK, it also means that the other Hogyoku is on him. Dustless thought in his mind. He didn't fuse with the Hogyoku at all, but the Hogyoku unexpectedly leaked Ryatsu. Dustless guessed that the two Hogyoku resonated with each other, and then caused Ryatsu to leak out and fill the bottomless Ryatsu in his body. It seems that the Hogyoku developed by Aizen is around. Or it's in Dong Xianyao's hands. Dustless looked at Dong Xianyao with eyes full of desire and desire. At the same time, Dong Xianyao also noticed the change in Dustless's Ryatsu, and his face changed drastically. Hado 88, Flying Dragon Strikes Thief Sky Thunder Cannon. Dong Xianyao, who realized that something was wrong, waved his hand, and a fierce and unparalleled beam of light appeared. The target was Dustless, who was somewhat stunned. Boom boom boom. Everything that came in contact with the beam of light, including life force, was evaporated, and blood was easily penetrated. The place where Dustless's combat power was previously was just like a stretch of charred ruins. Humph, let's see what you have to fight me. His spiritual pressure spread out, not letting go of any corner. Sensing that Dustless's spiritual pressure had completely disappeared, East Deity heaved a sigh of relief. The nightmare that had been shrouding her was finally gone with the wind, returning to dust. Her heart was exceptionally relaxed. It's finally over. What a bunch of trash shouting here and there, where's your sense of propriety? East Deity let out a sigh of relief. Hearing the noise coming from outside the virtual night palace, he coldly snorted. Just as he was about to turn around, his face instantly froze. A figure had invaded his vision. He didn't die. When did it happen? Pucci. Before he could finish speaking, East Deity Yao's entire body was in incomparable pain. His arm, which was sharper than a blade, forcefully tore open his chest. You bastard, you were aiming for that right from the start? Dong Xianyao clenched his fists tightly and raised his trembling hands, wanting to stop Dustless's actions. The Hogyoku isn't something that someone like you can touch. Using all the strength in his body, East Deity Yao's hands grabbed towards Dustless. The surface of his hands was covered with some materialized spiritual pressure, shining with cold light. Immediately he slashed towards Dustless. You don't know what's good for you. Seeing this, Dustless's expression turned cold, and a ray of golden light shot out from his fingertip. Pucci. Blood sprayed onto the ground and two more severed arms appeared. Both of East Deity Yao's arms were empty, and he was in extreme pain. His expression was distorted as he knelt on the ground, sweating profusely. Found it. After a few breaths of time, Dustless's eyes flashed, and he took out a blue sphere from East Deity Yao's chest. You relied on this thing to give those greater void the power of death, right? Dustless said as he played with the sphere in his hand. Looking at the Hogyoku in his hand, this was only a semi-finished product. However, East Deity Yao had broken it in advance and there was a huge flaw in it. Hearing this, East Deity Yao turned his head. Dustless's ugly face made him annoyed. The head captain gave me the order to destroy this thing. Destroy? Ah, stop dreaming. The material used to construct the Hogyoku is special, and no one in this world can destroy the Hogyoku. Not to mention a half-baked like you, even the head captain can't do it. East Deity Yao laughed crazily. Is that so? Hearing this, Dustless smiled and looked at the Hogyoku in his hand playfully. Suddenly, a black sphere jumped out from his back. Ka-ka-ka. A broken sound attracted East Deity Yao's attention. The smile on his face disappeared and he looked towards the source. The Hogyoku was slowly eroded by the black sphere and cracks appeared. It's fake, it must be fake. Seeing this, East Deity Yao roared crazily. I tried everything in the past but I couldn't destroy the Hogyoku. That's why I said you are an ordinary person. Dustless said calmly. The fragments of the Hogyoku were rapidly peeling off, and in just 5 or 6 seconds, it turned into nothing, destroyed by Dustless's ruthless use of the truth-seeking ball. In this way your dream is over. Looking down at the dazed East Deity Yao, Dustless knocked him out with a karate chop, but he didn't kill him. This kid was finished, the Hogyoku was taken away, and both his arms were crippled. It didn't matter whether he was alive or dead. Capturing you back to Soul Society is another great merit. You can also get rid of my suspicion, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. There was a reason why he didn't kill East Deity Yao. Dustless still needed East Deity Yao's mouth to let the whole Soul Society know that the Hogyoku was destroyed. Tiske, in order to get the 2 of you, I have never been so tired in my life. Looking at the 2 Hogyoku in his hand, Dustless was very excited. The scene of the Hogyoku being destroyed was just a self-directed illusion. Chapter 1031. Looking at the 2 bright gems in his hand, Dustless frowned, and his pupils immediately twisted sharply. Kamui. Space twisted, and the two hogyoku in his hand suddenly disappeared. It's time to leave, Wu Qin sighed as he glanced at Dong Xian, who was bleeding profusely. He immediately walked to his side and stopped his bleeding arms. He was still counting on Dong Xian to give false testimony. It was not worth the loss if he died. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At this moment, the sky suddenly turned dark green. Dustless was slightly stunned and looked up. A huge void flash came head-on. One after another, it's endless. With his eyes fixed, Dustless pulled out the first-generation ghost blade, covered the tip of the blade with a touch of golden ryatsu, and then threw out the blade. Kacha. The golden slash cut through the thistles and thorns, displaying an overwhelming power. The incoming dark green flash was directly torn into two halves, brushing past Dustless's shoulder. Boom boom boom. Two large holes were blasted in the ravaged Lost Yi Palace again, and the air blew in. The dull Lost Yi Palace was much cooler, and it added a little vitality. With the faint light, Dustless saw the newcomer. Ulquiorra. Ripples appeared in his calm eyes. Dustless still remembered this vasto lord. Among the 10 blades in the future, he was the only one who could perform the second return to blade. Your boss is almost dead, do you still want to stop me? Pointing to Dong Xianyao, who was unconscious and his heart was about to stop beating, Dustless asked. Although it's said that when the Grim Reaper meets a void, it's usually a fight to the death, but today I'm in a good mood, so if you know what's good for you, get out of my way and I can pretend that nothing happened. Having just seized the Hogyoku, Dustless smiled and was indeed in a good mood. Clang clang clang. While speaking, Ulquiorra's Zanpakuto was unsheathed, and his face was cold from beginning to end. He said, like you said, 2 hostile races can only fight to the death. You're in a good mood, but unfortunately, I'm in a bad mood. This kid is so loyal, Aizen. Dustless smacked his lips. He couldn't help but admire Aizen. Aizen was able to train his subordinates to the point where they were willing to die together with the enemy. Bang bang bang. The air exploded several times in succession, as if space had been torn apart. Ulquiorra disappeared without a trace, his speed making people blush with shame. Got it? Ulquiorra's emerald eyes bloomed with ominous light, and he immediately displayed the brutality of a great void at the level of Vasto Lord. In an instant, a blue flash condensed in his hand and compressed into a sharp spirit spear. Dustless was completely unaware as he stabbed towards his heart. Puchi. A fatal blow pierced through Dustless's body, leaving behind a ghastly hole the size of a human head. Strange. Seeing this, not only was Ulquiorra not happy, he raised his eyebrows, a puzzled look on his face. Why didn't he bleed when his heart was pierced? His mind was filled with confusion and hesitation. This was the first time he had encountered such an incredible thing. It was completely beyond his imagination. Just as Ulquiorra was thinking, a turbulent repulsive force hit him. Shinra Tensei. Without even the time to react, Ulquiorra was easily sent flying. Kakaka. Dense cracks appeared on the wall that was far thicker than steel. Ulquiorra was deeply trapped in it, and his dazed eyes seemed to have not realized what had happened. In a flash he was easily forced back. Dustless flicked away the dust and said, "It's normal to feel confused. I'm fundamentally different from the death god and void you fought in the past." Elemental transformation was enough for him to run rampant. Staring at the fallen Eastern sage, Dustless's eyes began to distort again. Divine might. A vortex appeared in the void, and Eastern Sage was immediately swallowed by it. As for Ulquiorra, he was ignored like air. Dustless simply left him with his back view and left. Vasto Lord was actually not as exaggerated as he had imagined. For ordinary captains he was very troublesome, but for some veteran captains the so-called Vasto Lord was actually just SOSO. It's not good for you to leave just like that. Where are your eyes looking? Your enemy is in front of you, don't look up at the sky. We were ignored. The great voids that suddenly appeared blocked Dustless's path of retreat. Seeing him looking up at the sky, they roared angrily. He actually shattered the heaven tremor star. The meteorite that fell from the sky turned into countless particles. The initiator should be the army formed by this group of Ajuchas and Vasto Lord. He's very strong. I heard that Baelegan was defeated by him, the middle-aged great void said with a cautious tone. My mission is completed. Before my mood turns bad, it's best to leave. Dustless had no interest in this group of great voids. He already obtained 2 Hogyoku. His next mission was to return to Soul Society and fuse with them secretly. You want to leave? That won't do. If you leave so casually, we will be the unlucky ones in the end. Nabila said with an unfriendly expression. The other great voids also nodded with fear. They watched Dustless leave unscathed. How could Aizen Sosuke let them go? Dustless frowned. He did not intend to kill this group of voids, but there were always some arrogant idiots in this world who thought they were strong. For example, this Ajuchas called Nabila in front of him. Since you all like to play the game of ascension so much, I will fulfill your wish. Dustless's expression turned cold. His killing intent exploded. Chapter 1032. Dustless returned to Soul Society with satisfaction, but Shiro and Shisadora Senjumaru had a hard time. Although the two were strong, they weren't like Dustless. They didn't have a series of heaven-defying ninjutsu, nor did they have elemental transformation to be immune to physical attacks. They could only fight head-on with the thousands of Minos from Empty Temple. Shisadora Senjumaru and Shiro were extremely angry. They swore to return to Soul Society and teach Dustless a lesson. This debt must be paid. After returning to Soul Society, Dustless didn't rush to find the head captain. Instead, he returned to the 7th Division first. After East Senju defected and left Soul Society, Dustless was transferred from the 11th Division to the 7th Division. The original captain was Zaraki. After returning to the 7th Division, Dustless took a quick bath and then had a good sleep. The next day he went to the 1st Division for the captain's meeting. In the large 1st Division, only head captain Yamamoto was sitting. The other captains were standing. Even so, they didn't dare to have any dissatisfaction. Head captain Yamamoto was equivalent to the history of Soul Society. He personally created the Godai 13. No one could compare to him in terms of strength and experience. Captain Dustless, you returned with a smile on your face. The trip to Hueco Mundo must have been a great success. Aizen stood up and asked with a smile. Looking at Dustless, Aizen had a bad premonition. It shouldn't be possible to catch East Senju so quickly. It's only been a few days. No matter how stupid he is, even if those Minos from Empty Temple are a group of pigs, they shouldn't have been defeated in just a few days. Taking a deep look at Dustless, Aizen comforted himself. Captain Aizen, thank you for your kind words. East Senju? I finally caught him. Dustless smiled at Aizen and replied in a clear voice. Is that so? So fast? Then congratulations to Captain Dustless for making a great contribution. Aizen cupped his fists and congratulated on the surface, but his heart was twitching, and his internal organs were bleeding. Even his usually gentle and refined old face had a slight flaw in it. Captain Aizen's face is ugly. Are you feeling unwell? Do you need me to tell you the process of how I defeated the East Deity Palace to cheer you on? Dustless's voice was light and friendly. Aizen's face turned black, but he forced a smile and said, Captain Dustless, you worry too much. I'm in good health. Eastern Deity, what do you want in the end? The head captain waved his hand and asked expectantly. Here. Dustless smiled and the void twisted. What an amazing ability. The captains were dumbfounded. They were all experienced and knowledgeable people, but this was the first time they had seen Dustless's unheard-of ability. It seems to be a space-type ability. Is it the ability of his Zanpakuto? Yamamoto was surprised. This was the first time he had seen such an ability that was similar to space control, but he quickly understood after thinking about his Zanpakuto. No matter how incredible it is, compared to the strongest and oldest Zanpakuto Ryujin Jaka, nothing is worth mentioning. Absolute strength crushes everything. Divine might. Boom. The void twisted, and the dispirited East Deity Palace appeared, but he was mercilessly thrown to the ground by Dustless. At this moment, East Deity Palace was extremely miserable. His hands were broken, his face was as pale as paper, and his body was covered with wounds. It was not difficult to tell what kind of damage he suffered before. East Deity? Witnessing East Senpai's hideous appearance, his good friend Saojin pounded his feet and stomped his chest in grief. His entire body was filled with a vicious aura that could cause people to collapse. His eyes instantly turned crimson like a blood pool. So scary, Wuqian turned his head and glanced at Zhuozhen. Wuqian was calm and didn't put him in his eyes at all. You bastard, how dare you? Sajin's murderous intent was revealed, and he even pulled out his Zanpakuto. Stop it. The head captain, old man Yamamoto, scolded before Wuqian could speak. He felt helpless and had a headache. In the Godai 13, Sajin was the only close friend of East Deity Palace. He had been friends with him for many years, but now his hands were broken. Sajin snorted and stood back in the formation with a pale face. He took back his Zanpakuto. If he had the chance, he would not let Dustless go so easily. What about the orb that can give you the power of a greater void? Yamamoto thought of the most important thing, and he was a bit anxious. Are you talking about the Hogyoku? It has been destroyed. Dustless looked at Yamamoto's eyes and said naturally. Destroyed? That's impossible, the probability of that thing being destroyed is 0. Mayuri was the first to question. When East Deity Palace wanted to use the Hogyoku, the head captain ordered him to investigate. Although he didn't know what happened, Mayuri found that the Hogyoku was made of extraordinary materials, and the probability of it being destroyed was 0. How could it be destroyed? Aizen's heart was pounding and he looked at Dustless suspiciously. Hearing this, Dustless already expected this. He glanced at East Deity Palace and said, if you don't believe me you can ask him. At that time, many greater voids in Hueco Mundo saw me destroy the Hogyoku. All the captains looked at East Deity Palace, and he nodded with an ugly face. East Deity Palace's heart was broken into thousands of pieces. It took a lot of time and effort to make the Hogyoku, and it was destroyed so easily by Dustless. East Deity Palace wanted to skin Dustless alive. It's best to destroy it, that thing shouldn't exist in the world. Yamamoto was relieved and he was more and more satisfied with Dustless. Although he had only been a Shinigami for less than a year, he was the most satisfied. Hearing the head captain's words and East Deity Palace's confirmation, all the captain's doubts disappeared. That's it, using genjutsu to make East Deity Palace witness me destroying the Hogyoku was the right thing to do. Dustless felt relieved and he began to think about fusing the Hogyoku. Chapter 1033. Mayuri saw this and although he was still hesitant, he shut his mouth. The head captain just smiled. If he continued to pursue the matter, it would be considered impure. He actually admitted it. Aizen was surprised to see East Sensei in a daze. He stared at East Sensei, his sharp eyes able to see through people's hearts. He tried to destroy the Hogyoku but it didn't work. Find a chance to ask about the details. Aizen stood up and said, Head Captain, the great sinner East Sensei betrayed Soul Society and joined Hueco Mundo. He should be handed over to Central 46 for sentencing. That's right, that kind of traitor should be executed immediately. The great Shinigami fell to void, shameful. East Sensei is the mark of Soul Society's shame. A bunch of idiots, execute? What a joke. That kind of perfect test subject should be put on the operating table I built for Captain East Sensei. Jianghu? A strange existence that can control both Void and Shinigami's power, just thinking about it makes me excited. It's a pity that Hogyoku was destroyed, otherwise hee. The group of captains discussed how to deal with East Sensei. Only Seizen and Dustless remained silent. Of course there was also Aizen who looked like he was about to collapse. I spent 100 years and the Hogyoku was so easily destroyed. Aizen's heart was bleeding. It took a lot of effort to build the Hogyoku, 100 years and a large number of Shinigami souls. In the end it was destroyed by Dustless. Aizen couldn't take it lying down. His heart was breaking apart with a ka-ka-ka sound. I can't let this go so easily, I must take revenge, I must. Aizen glared fiercely, far more dangerous than a deadly viper. Sosuke Aizen swore to himself that in the future, he would not let him off so easily. A debt of blood must be paid with blood. Yoshimura's Wuxian was also covered in cold sweat. Looking at Mayuri's hysterical look of wanting to dissect East Deity, his nose was so angry that it became crooked. I will definitely remember this. Wuxian stared at Dustless with a burning look in his eyes. He clenched his fists so tightly that they were bigger than buckets. A destructive aura spread out from his body. Two little insects. You want to fight me? You're courting death. Dustless remained indifferent. Although Aizen and Sasuke's hid their emotions well, Dustless was secretly observing the changes in their expressions. Dustless was able to see even the slightest flaw. Speaking of which, what's wrong with Hueco Mundo's Great Void? While the captains were debating on how to deal with East Deity, the head captain's words shut everyone up. Everyone's gaze once again turned to Dustless. Hearing this, Dustless had a strange look on his face. At that time he had severely tricked Seo Tongsai and Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru. Although he was sure that the two of them wouldn't die, it must have taken a lot of effort. After all, it was Lost Yi Palace, where several Vasto Lord and Ajuchas gathered. I don't know. At that time I was surrounded by a group of great voids, and my spiritual pressure was almost exhausted. After I caught East Deity, I used the portal that Mayuri made for me to leave. Dustless said, not mentioning anything about Team Zero. Yamamoto nodded and then said seriously, today's meeting ends here. Tomorrow the criminal East Deity will be handed over to Central 46. Phew, Wu Chen's hanging heart was finally relieved. After fooling the people of Soul Society, he could create the Hogyoku with peace of mind without any worries. Looking at the gloomy Aizen, Dustless had some sympathy. Ever since he came to Soul Society, he had deliberately ruined Aizen's plans time and time again. Now he even took away the Hogyoku. If Sosuke Aizen knew the cause and effect, he would probably die from anger. After the meeting, all the division captains left. During this time, Unohana Retsu invited Dustless to the 4th Division for treatment, but Dustless politely declined. His heart was now focused on the Hogyoku. After all, it was an overpowered item that was not inferior to the Jubi. Along the way, Dustless hummed a tune and skipped back to the 7th Division. Yo, Captain Dustless, you're in a good mood. As soon as he stepped into the 7th Division captain's office, 2 unexpected figures entered Dustless's sight. The smile on Dustless's face froze and he said bitterly, how did the 2 of you end up like this? How dare you? My spiritual pressure has just recovered. I will go to Hueco Mundo and find those great voids to avenge you. The 2 women were Shout Oro Senju Maru and Saiso Tongsen. But at the moment they were in a very bad state. Shout Oro Senju Maru's skeletal arms were all destroyed, and Saiso Tongsen had turned from a fatty into a sexy beauty. Such a huge change was due to the exhaustion of her majestic spiritual pressure. In short, both of them were wearing ragged clothes and looked tired. Don't give me that. Saiso Tongsen and Saiso Tongsen did not appreciate it. They looked at each other and Shout Oro Senju Maru went straight to the point. I have investigated the Hogyoku. It is impossible to destroy it so easily. Even if East Deity admitted it himself, I find it hard to believe. Chapter 1034. But Saisu Tongsai and Shidoro Senju Maru didn't appreciate it. They looked at each other and Shidoro Senju Maru went straight to the point. I have investigated the Hogyoku before. It is absolutely impossible to destroy it easily. Although East Senju admitted it personally, I find it hard to believe. Saisu Tongsai also nodded, looking at Dustless suspiciously and immediately said, Senju Maru has investigated the origin of the Hogyoku. Although I can't figure out how East Senju made it, according to the various information left by him, there should be no attack in the world that can destroy the Hogyoku. Hearing this, Dustless sat down indifferently, resting his head on his arms and smiled. To put it bluntly, the 2 of you are suspecting that I stole the Hogyoku. But East Senju admitted it personally, and many great voids saw it in Hueco Mundo. What is the truth? You will know after asking. After saying that, Dustless closed his eyes calmly. Shidoro Senju Maru frowned. She couldn't deny this point. After Dustless left Hueco Mundo, the 2 of them caught a great void and asked about East Senju. The answer was that the great void was captured by Dustless, and the Hogyoku was also destroyed. So what? Maybe you used despicable means to force East Senju and the great voids of Hueco Mundo. In fact, you secretly stole the Hogyoku. That kind of thing, any death god will be tempted. Saisu Tongsai snorted coldly and grabbed Dustless without letting go. This woman, frowning slightly, Dustless's eyes flashed with a hint of anger. Saisu Tongsai was obviously pestering him and deliberately making things difficult for him. I shouldn't have offended her. Dustless's brain cells were working hard. It had only been a year since he came to Soul Society, and Squad Zero only had contact with Shidoro Senju Maru. He didn't know anyone else. Not to mention Saisu Tongsai. Right? I see. Maybe it is because of the Mask Legion. Saisu Tongsai and Masako Hirako of the Mask Legion have a good relationship with each other. After pondering for a few seconds, Dustless had an idea. He sneered in his heart. Saiso Kirusei obviously wanted to take revenge for Heiko Masako, Sarutobi Nishikori, and the Masked Legion. If you want to play with me, sure. But I'm afraid you 2 won't be able to afford it. Today I'll play you 2 to death. Dustless's sneer turned into a joke. Since the 2 of them had come looking for trouble without reason, even if it was Squad Zero, Dustless would not be afraid. At most they would break up. Then may I ask, Captain Yizhou, what do you want to do to me? Opening his eyes, Dustless asked jokingly, to catch a thief you need the stolen goods. If you don't have any evidence, you can accuse me of embezzling the Hogyoku. Even if you are a member of Squad Zero, it will be difficult for you. Hearing this, Swan Tongsai smirked proudly. Boy, of course I have evidence. Although I can't make something like a hogyoku in a short time, I forgot to tell you that about 250 years ago, I was the captain of the 12th Division. Saiyasu Tongsai's tone was very proud. As the director of the Technology Development Bureau before Urahara Kisuke, he indeed had the capital to be proud. Dustless raised his eyebrows, lowered his head, and then asked calmly, "You don't want to say that you want to make a hogyoku and then give it to me to destroy, right? With all due respect, that kind of thing is impossible without decades or even hundreds of years." "Sorry, I did make it." Saiyasu Tongsai smiled and took out a blue bead. "Of course, this so-called hogyoku is just a superficial thing. It doesn't have the ability to obtain the Shinigami and the hollow at the same time. It's just that its hardness is very close to hogyoku. Now please destroy it for me." Dustless was stunned and looked at Saiyasu Tongsai and Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru in surprise. The blue bead was the same as the hogyoku that Dustless hid in the Shinto space. "How long has it been?" Dustless couldn't help but feel speechless. The time gap between when the Eastern Sage incident broke out and when they escaped from Soul Society was at most 1 month. However, the 2 abnormal members of Squad Zero in front of him created a hogyoku in just half a month. Although it was not a real hogyoku, Dustless absolutely believed that as long as they were given enough time, they could definitely create a hogyoku at an unimaginable speed. "The speed of the 2 of you is embarrassing," Dustless complained with cold sweat. He couldn't help but want to abduct the 2 of them to his camp. "Stop talking nonsense, destroy it for me now. If you can do it, it's okay, but if you can't, there will be big trouble. I'm afraid there will be another captain in the infernal hell," Saiyasu Tongsai said in a cold tone. Hearing this, Wu Qin sneered and said without showing any weakness, "The conditions proposed by the 2 of you are really ridiculous. No matter what, I'm still a team leader. If you want me to destroy it, I'll destroy it. Where will I put my face if this gets out?" Dustless's face was like a dead pig that was not afraid of boiling water, which made Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru and Saiyasu Tongsai grit their teeth. "If you can destroy this imitation, Hueco Mundo will let bygones be bygones." Seeing that Dustless was stubborn, Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru could only take a step back helplessly. After all, the 2 of them were indeed unreasonable in this matter. They accused Dustless without any evidence, which was slander. "I'm waiting for you to say that." Dustless laughed in his heart, and the corner of his mouth lifted into a cunning arc. He pretended to have a headache and said, "It's okay if I use that move to destroy the hogyoku, but you also know that the stronger the move, the more troublesome it is to control. If it goes out of control, you 2 can't blame me." Saiyasu Tongsai and Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru frowned and said in unison, "No problem. You're tuning in to the Sworddance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.